I'm going to call the Select Board meeting to order for Monday, September 30th, 2024, and we will be going into executive session, and we will not return before 6 p.m. Pete, can I get a motion to go into executive?
Item A, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss with respect to collective bargaining for all town unions, and the chair has determined that open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's bargaining position. Harwich Employee Association, HEA, joint meeting with the Brooks Library Board of Trustees.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Pete?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, 5-0. Thank you. Open it.
Because we had adjourned it.
Okay.
Until
Good evening. I'm going to call the Select Board meeting for Monday, September 30th, 2024, back to order. We were in executive session earlier this evening, and we took action to direct administration.
Sorry.
Oh.
I don't think we're live in there yet.
Oh, we're not? Oh. Disregard everything I
kidding.
just said.
Go ahead.
Just
Talk,
kidding.
I'll tell them.
Sorry. We've ordered pizza for everybody. It should be here in about an hour. So, cheese and pepperoni. We'll serve it in the game room next time.
Open. All right, thanks. We're going to try it again. So, good evening. I'm calling the Select Board meeting for Monday, September 30th, 2024, back to order. We were in executive session earlier this evening. We took action to direct administration, and at this point, I would like to remind you that as required by open meeting law, you are hereby informed that the town will be video and audio taping as well as live broadcasting this public meeting. In addition, anyone in the audience who plans to video or audio tape this meeting must notify the chair prior to the start of the meeting. Before I go to the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd just like to let you all know that obviously we've got a large crowd tonight, and for egress issues, we've got to keep these aisles clear. If anybody in the other room wants to make a statement, they must come into this room to the microphone, and they can either use the side entrance or they can come in the main door at the front.
Julie,
Sorry?
it's very delayed. They would like you to tell you that.
Okay,
They're just hearing your first announcement.
okay. Thank you. So now I will ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started on public comments and announcements, I'm going to hand it over to Dawn to acknowledge our town clerk, Emily Mitchell, and the passing of her dad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This week, the town of Harwich lost another iconic figure. Barry Mitchell, retired lieutenant of the Harwich Police Department. He started on the force as a special, which is not something that's even possible any longer. I've known him for 30 years. He was tough but fair. He was a man of high integrity, and if I might say, he was a cop's cop. And also, I came to know him through shopping at Stop and Shop over the past couple of years as the shopper for his home. The town is a poorer place for his passing, and because of that, at this time, I'd like you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else on the select board for public comment and announcement? Okay, sorry.
Sorry, not select board, but two quick announcements. Just a reminder that tomorrow evening, Tuesday, October 1st, will be the Community Engagement Forum on the Phase 3 sewer work that's looking to start up the following month in November. Again, the Community Engagement Forum on Phase 3 sewer tomorrow evening, Community Center Multipurpose Room at 6:30. And would also announce on behalf of Robert B. Auer, the contractor, and GHD Incorporated, the vendor and the engineer consultant, that the town will also be hosting a community engagement forum the end of October, October 29th at 6:30 PM. And that's what we're referring to as the Phase 3A project, which would be around the Great Sand Lakes area. So Tuesday, October 1st is Phase 3 Sewer Extension Community Engagement Forum. All are welcome. It will be recorded and will be broadcast later for more information, but everyone is encouraged and invited to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody for public comment and announcement? Sure, come up to the microphone.
Hey, Sherry Stockdale, 286 Main Street. I'm going to speak about the Pine Oaks.
So that's a agenda item, so we're going to wait for any kind of comments on Pine Oaks until it's time for that section.
Understood.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening, Patrick Otten, East Harwich. Same for the hearing on the number 5, public hearing on the stormwater permit. Do you want comments now or then?
That is going to be continued, so we won't be taking any comments until that happens.
Continued, okay. Question, there's been discussion in the past about a fall town meeting. Can you give me the status?
At this point,
Just curious.
I'm going to say that we are not moving forward with the fall town meeting, but I'm going to also look over to my my administrative lead, Joe Powers.
So looking back in the direction of the board, that was my understanding when the board discussed the matters, generally on September 16th.
Right.
So at this point, there are no plans for a special town meeting this fall.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anybody else for public comment and announcement? Hearing nobody, can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, item A, approve the Select Board meeting minutes from September 16, 2024.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pete?
Just page 8 of the minutes, second paragraph talks about a vote 4-0 in favor, and the motion carried. That vote did not occur, and if you continue down, the language following is correct, where we withdrew the motion in the second
Okay.
and agreed to continue it.
Okay. So we'll have to,
So, thank you.
Motion did not carry.
So there was no motion, it was just withdrawn,
okay.
so literally just that sentence, which is the second paragraph, needs to be removed.
Right. Okay, so with that change, any other comments on those minutes? So you're good with that?
Yep.
So, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. The public hearing,
Madam Chair, item A on the public hearing continued from September 16, 2024, to approve a stormwater permit application for an 8-lot subdivision plan 1594 and 1598 Orleans Road, located off Orleans Road, Assessors Map 107, parcels S2-1 and S2-2. A vote to continue to October 21, 2024.
Second.
moved and seconded. Officially, any need to open the public hearing to continue it, or we opened it prior to?
So,
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
apologize, I thought that was the sense of the motion. So if you're looking to open to continue, that's proper.
Okay. So,
And
So moved.
second was Mr. Handler?
yes,
Thank you.
second. Moved and seconded. All in favor of continuing?
Aye.
5-0. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the Pine Oaks Village Phase 4, 51 Queen Anne Road Project Eligibility Letter. And I just want to note, prior to going to item A, public input and review of other comments, that obviously we have a large crowd here tonight. I would ask that if you choose to speak, that you limit yourself to 3 minutes, and please don't come up to say the exact same thing somebody else has said, because obviously we want to get as much input as we can on the various topics. I also want to let the people in the overflow room know that they can come in and wait to speak if that's more convenient. I understand there's a delay, but again, I would just ask everybody to be respectful of time and people's comments and leave it at that. Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening to you and the members of the board and everybody here assembled, as well as who may be watching on the Harwich channel. So what you'll see on the screen is the regulation that brings us here this evening. And what you have presented for anyone in the public is really the center of focus on the comments tonight. And Madam Chair, you and the members of the board have in front of you the memorandum regarding this matter, the letter that was sent that initiates this public input this evening, and then the actual findings and determination that the Commonwealth, through the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, herein referred to as EOHLC. It's going to flow off the tongue. But Madam Chair, if I could, just for the benefit of everybody assembled and watching, what I would recommend, Madam Chair and members of the board and anyone that wishes to comment, what you see displayed is the state regulation on comprehensive permits, which is what 40Bs are, and specifically 5604 is the responsibility of the Commonwealth through EOHLC to determine whether the project for Pine Oaks Village Homes Phase 4 is eligible for funding. And so within that, they must make determinations and findings, and that's what you see up in front of you. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, and everyone assembled, we have a banner on the website where this information has been presented. We have in the packet comments that were provided by I believe all town departments that have some correlation to the project, and some information that I gave department heads. So what we're looking at then is I believe it's 8 items here that the state's going to look at. So item A is that the proposed project appears generally to be eligible under the requirements of the state's housing subsidy program. That's not a matter for us to determine. So we didn't necessarily comment that through departments. Item B says that the site of the proposed project is generally appropriate for residential development, taking into consideration information provided by the municipality or other parties regarding municipal actions previously taken to meet affordable housing needs, such as inclusionary zoning, multifamily districts adopted under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, and overlay districts adopted under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40R, parentheses, such finding with supporting reason to be set forth in reasonable detail. So, Madam Chair and members of the board, you'll see that item B, there were comments that were provided by department heads that talked to some of these, specifically inclusionary zoning, as well as not 40R, but 40Y, which you may know is an offset of 40R, and that is the what's known as the starter home overlay zoning district. In any event, you'll see comments from department heads, and you may hear comments from those assembled. Item C is that the conceptual project design is generally appropriate for the site on which it is located, taking into consideration factors that may include proposed use, conceptual site plan and building massing, topography, environmental resources, and integration into existing development patterns, parentheses, such finding with supporting reason to be set forth in reasonable detail, close parentheses. Item D, that the proposed project appears financially feasible within the housing market in which it will be situated, parentheses, based on comparable rentals or sales figures, close parentheses. Item E, that an initial pro forma has been reviewed, including a land valuation determination consistent with the department's guidelines, and the project appears financially feasible and consistent with the department's guidelines for cost examination and limitations on profits and distributions, parentheses, if applicable, close parentheses, on the basis of the estimated development costs. Item F, that the applicant is a public agency, a nonprofit organization, or a limited dividend organization, and it meets the general eligibility standards of the housing program. And item G, that the applicant controls the site based on evidence that the applicant or a related entity owns the site or holds an option or contract to acquire such interest in the site or has such other interest in the site as is deemed by the subsidizing agency to be sufficient to control the site. The subsidizing agency shall provide copies of its written determination of project eligibility to the department, to the chief executive officer of the municipality, that is you folks, the select board, and the reference there, and the board, is to the zoning board of appeals. So members of the board, everyone assembled here, I know that department heads had focused on items within items B, C, and I believe G, and have commentary to the same. Department heads are generally available if you have comments on their materials. And then last but not least, I would just remind that the effort tonight will also pair with a site visit. As of this afternoon by 4:30, we're still not aware of the date and location of the site visit, but that is part of public input. Lastly, we are expecting that you, the board, will have a letter that you can approve to be sent after your board meeting next Monday, October 7th. I also want to note that you do have a second item under this topic, and that is whether or not the town should seek an extension of this 30-day review, given that we still have yet to receive the full 4 emails that the state had indicated they sent. Having said that, Madam Chair, I'm available, staff is available, and I would just encourage everybody to try to make their connections to the findings that the state's going to rely upon. Any commentary that's already been sent to the board will be included in the materials. So anyone that's written letters to the board, that's already going to be included. We're going to rely upon input tonight and rely upon the transcripts of the meeting to include that in your letter as well.
Thank you,
I
Joe.
think I've covered everything.
Thank you. And that, just to reiterate, anybody who sent the board letters, we have forwarded them on to Joe Powers, and I would suggest that if you haven't written one and you plan on, then you should send it directly to Joe Powers. So I will invite the public up to speak, and again, I just remind you to keep it to 3 minutes and to not be repetitive, for everybody's sake.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Kendall, 86 Old Chatham Road, Harwich. I am here representing and also agree with Paula Miles from 163 Main Street. She's currently ill with COVID. She wanted me to come in and read this to you. So what she writes is, I want to thank neighbor Dan Baker for reminding us that when we bought our properties in North Harwich, we depend on local zoning to protect our plans for the future. We knew that minor exceptions would be expected and that the Zoning Board of Appeals would decide on them. But it is not a minor exception to add a story on several buildings over the allowed height restriction of 30 feet. And it is not a minor exception to populate a pristine woodland area with numbers far denser than its current zoning would actually permit. If these exceptions were granted, we would lose all faith in our zoning laws, which are in place to keep things fair for all of us people in Harwich. I will plead with the Zoning Board of Appeals to hold this project to a size that conforms to current zoning laws. I'd ask them to enforce the height limit of 30 feet so that the buildings are 2 stories tall, not 3. And I'd also ask that they enforce the developer's promise to preserve the 22-plus acres of natural woodland surrounding these buildings. That they leave our native trees and natural undergrowth, and that the walking area around the wetlands and kettle ponds be left unlandscaped and unpaved. Granting these exceptions would only damage the value of homeowners' investments and also shake their trust in the town bylaws that should actually, in fact, protect all of us in Harwich. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Pine Oaks 4 massive housing development would abut an industrial zone.
Sorry, state your name for the record.
Sherry Stockdale, 286 Main Street.
Thank you.
The Pine Oaks 4 massive housing development would abut an industrial zone, which is a dangerous area for driving, but even more so for bicycling and walking, with no sidewalks, no safe access to the rail trail, washed-out shoulders, narrow areas, patched-up asphalt, blind hills, telephone poles, and guardrails. These roads are heavily used by large commercial vehicles, often passing each other with little room to spare. Compounding the problem is the dangerous intersection of Queen Anne and Main Street and the low-lying area of road over the Herring River, which floods in heavy rain and ices up in snow, causing skidding and loss of control. Pine Oaks 4 would be miles from the nearest grocery store, gas station, pharmacy, post office, etc., necessitating heavy automobile use. Using trip generation statistics, the Pine Oaks 4 development is projected to generate 2,234 trips per average on a weekday on roads where drivers speed 80% of the time, according to Pine Oaks' own traffic study. Also, according to Pine Oaks' own traffic study, the Queen Anne, Pleasant Lake, and the Main Street Depot Road intersections are both currently operating at or over capacity. In addition, this area will also see an influx of traffic from the affordable housing being built at 456 Queen Anne Road, as well as the traffic from the transitional housing facility at the former Eagle Pond Nursing Home, whose only access is through the intersection of Main Street and Depot Street. This is all in addition to the 10 years of construction traffic that would be caused by this development. All of this affects density along the entire Queen Anne corridor, including the massive afternoon backups trying to get off Route 6 at exit 82, and the backups in all directions at the Route 124 Queen Anne Road intersection during morning and evening rush hour. This kind of increase in volume and density demands infrastructure improvement. Unless it gets planned and decided now, the town will have to pay for improvements to the infrastructure and roads when it's determined the roads, intersections, and the Herring River culvert on Main Street can't handle the increased vehicle density, including the wear and tear caused by the many commercial vehicles that will be in and out of the job site over the 10 years needed to complete this massive project. It seems like common sense that a serious and comprehensive infrastructure improvement plan must be put in place before any building begins.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak?
Hi, Teresa Johnson, North Harwich. Cape Cod Commission has a permanent traffic counter at Route 124 and Queen Anne Road, which consistently showed over 5 years that July was the highest traffic month. In 2023, that intersection saw 25,114 vehicles. This intersection continually has long lines waiting at the light. The traffic counter at the Harwich landfill showed 36,940 vehicles in June of 2024. Cape Cod Commission Traffic Count Reviewer online shows traffic counts in given areas on specific days and times throughout Cape Cod. Although some of the data is older, it still has astonishing traffic numbers that are periodically updated. July 18th, 2005, at the beginning of Main Street from Depot Street intersection, at 4 p.m., the traffic count was 4,418. June 18th, 2001, Main Street, just before Queen Anne split, at 5 p.m., the traffic count was 4,003 vehicles, all of which traveled over the fragile Herring River culvert. June 4th, 2012, at the beginning of Queen Anne Road at 4 p.m., the traffic count was 4,996 vehicles, which increased by 1,400 since 2002. July 19th, 2022, on Queen Anne Road, just before the Route 124 light at 3 p.m., the traffic count was 7,994 vehicles. The Cape Cod Commission from 2018 to 2020 has reported 30 accidents from the intersection of Main Street and Depot to the intersection of Queen Anne and Route 124. They are working on updating these figures to the next three-year range. The Cape Cod Commission has a listing of the top interchange locations based on the number of crashes. Out of the 17 locations listed, Harwich, Old Exit 10, was number 4 on the list with 67 crashes. Harwich, Old Exit 11, was number 11 on the list with 33 crashes. The Cape Cod Commission performed a Route 6 traffic study in June of 2019, which included their executive summary, a comment, consider targeted safety projects to extend accelerated and decelerated lane lengths at high priority locations, which included exit 10 and 11, which has not been performed. I'm working with the Cape Cod Commission and will hopefully have more current traffic counts by next week, which they are working on for me. Pine Oaks Village is a nonprofit developer that pays 50% reduced taxes to the town of Harwich and will be applying for our CPC money funds as well as federal and state grants to fund their project to generate more profits for them for years to come. In addition, a member of the Harwich CPC committee is also an officer for the developer. These huge, massive buildings are over height, contain third-floor living space. These, among other items, they will be applying for town variances with the ZBA. This massive development is too big for our area of low-density designation in North Harwich. The roads are narrow, windy, flood in heavy rain, and have bad sight lines, and will generate more traffic than the roads in North Harwich can handle.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Good evening, Tom Birch. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Full-time resident since 1980. Live on Queen Anne Road since 1991. 2 separate residents and a commercial property. I highly question the traffic study that was presented to us. A 2-day traffic study generated 360 pages of who knows what. I tried to read it, understand it, but I'm not quite sure how you develop 360 pages unless you're trying to confuse us. I've conducted an unofficial traffic study in my residence on Queen Anne Road since 1991 to 2005 at one location, and I moved to North Harwich because of the zoning, because of the wildlife, because of the openness, and now we're going to put potentially 300 or whatever in an apartment there. I just think I'm all for affordable housing. It's just too big and not the proper place. Why do we have zoning? To protect our values, to protect our lifestyle, and just wipe it out. Off we go. Going to create this huge project. I also question the funding. I understand, and I'm all for churches to have their worship centers and their places of worship, but I question the separation of church and state. If they're going to be receiving money, our CPC money that we all work hard to pay into, and they're going to take it and then not pay taxes or a small portion of taxes. And we're going to have increased school, increased fire, increased police, increased traffic, increased highway department. So these are my things. And personal, I moved out there to enjoy the wildlife and to enjoy the wilderness, and we're going to destroy that habitat. One other thing, I questioned back in the beginning, and I was kind of laughed at behind my back, that I said, why don't we get it off of Queen Anne Road? We have both sides. We could go to Main Street, and if not, at least water down the entrance and have one on each side. And they said, oh, no, we don't want to do that because they don't want it over on Main Street. And then another thing they proposed bikes. Obviously, there was a traffic problem. Bikes on Queen Anne Road? Come on. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Would anybody else like to speak?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Barry Nunes. I live at 221 Main Street in North Harwich. I just want to give people here a feel for how I'm living right now. I live right at the corner of Main and Queen Anne. Every morning, loud as hell, trucks coming down that road. Every truck you can think of, pickup truck, van, dump truck, 12-wheelers, whatever they are, trailer trucks. They've come so close to my property when they're trying to take a left onto Main that my wall has some damage. Not that they've hit it, just from wear and tear. And I don't even allow my kids during the day to drive out of the driveway. I get out, I cross the street, and I look down, and I look this way, and I wave them on. I've been hit, haven't been hit, but I've had issues numerous times with people almost hitting me coming out of my driveway. People have asked me, how do you get out? And I've had someone who wanted to fight me. I put my window down, rain, snow, cold, whatever, when I come to the end of my driveway and I want to take a left onto Main Street so I can hear the traffic, because you've got about a half a second. Once you pull out, that's it. That's it. Nighttime, it's different. You can see the lights. No one should have to live like that. I've been there off and on for 74 years. It's never been like that. North Harwich was a sleepy little hamlet. People went there. If you saw traffic at all, it's because people lived there, they were visiting, or yes, they were lost. There's no stores out there. There's no convenience stores. There's no gas stations. It's a community that is being split up. The character of that area is changing. And I ought to know, I've been out there long enough. I think when I look at what the town's doing, I'm not saying the town's doing this, but we need a dump. Where should we put it? North Harwich, of course. The DPW, build new fire station, new police station. DPW, it's not a good site on Sisson. Where do we put it? North Harwich. The dump. It's one thing after another. The area is over 1 mile long where all the businesses are. And the buildings are horrendous. They look awful. I can understand not wanting that on Route 28, but I don't want it either. I have to cross through there. When I drive up Queen Anne, over 3/4 of the traffic, trucks. And when they come down to that stop sign at Queen Anne in Maine, it is so freaking loud. They hit the brakes, screeching, all of that, then gears trying to get up the hill. It's about fairness as well to the people of North Harwich. You know, I think we've done our share. Everything that seems to people don't want goes into North Harwich. Even the food pantry. Anyway, all I'm saying is there's no businesses out there that people stop at and pick up something to eat or whatever. It's businesses that involve trucks, excavation equipment, and it's damn loud. And during the morning, it's hell, and the afternoon rush is the same thing. And the other thing, I know the town knows this. I can tell you why. There's signs out there. Limited sight view coming up the hill where I live. Thickly settled, 30 miles per hour. Dangerous intersection, school bus stop. The town is well aware that this area is extremely, extremely crowded during certain times of the day. You can't even walk your dog on Main Street. It's too dangerous. The roads aren't equipped to handle the trucks that are on that street. There's nowhere for people to go if they want to walk. I know I have to give up, but I just want to say from somebody who lives in that area, and God knows I love it, I want to see it preserved. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Doan. I've had the privilege of being a resident of this town for almost 82 years now. And I come before you today to ask for your support for the project as proposed by the Pine Oaks Village for a group. I had the privilege of serving as its president when we had the first Pine Oaks Village in 1975. And I remember at that time that change, I know, brings controversy and concerns, which are very justified. I can't deny that. But the town has a way of being able to react to demands, whether it be infrastructure or whether it be environmental issues or whatever. It's a very resilient organization. And we worry today about things like the intersection there, which I agree would be terrible if we dumped another 2,000 cars per day or whatever in that area. But there's ways to address that. I remember the issues when they were talking about the Rotary Circle up there at Queen Anne Road and Route 39. Today, it's the most convenient that I know of in terms of getting through that area. Take you back to 1975 when the town was concerned about the strange addition of a multifamily housing project for elderly people in the town. We never had one before. It's like the time when I became town moderator and we'd never had a woman on the finance committee until I appointed women to the finance committee in 1974. Things have a way of changing for the good. The project that we put into place in 1975 today is a wonderful resource for the town of Harwich. There's no complaints that I'm aware of, ever. The traffic flows well, but there were concerns back then about, we got to do some rezoning, and what is all this stuff about putting a little more higher density in this area, and what are the land use issues, what are the environmental issues? But it worked out. And today, it's an area we can point to with great pride in this town for being one of the first communities to take such an initiative. Support of the planning board, the support of the Board of Selectmen at the time, the support of the zoning board, and of course the town meeting action eventually. My wife and I have had the opportunity to serve on the Pine Oaks board for a long time. My wife much longer than I, 23 years she served through both the Pine Oaks 1, 2, and 3, much of that as its treasurer. I just want to emphasize with the board that housing is a serious concern throughout the Cape, and providing adequate locations for people of more limited means. We can accommodate all the summer seasonal people, but the year-round people, the people that drive this community, the people that make everything function, they're the ones that we need to be concerned about and need to make sure we do provide housing. We can resolve the environmental issues, I'm convinced. We can resolve the traffic issues, I'm convinced. We've done it before on Pine Oaks 1, 2, and 3. And the last comment I'll make is that change is coming to the town. Housing will be provided somehow through this process. But I'm telling you, Pine Oaks Village is comprised of, the board of the Pine Oaks Villages is comprised of people who are Harwich residents. They've lived here much of their life, in some cases all of their life. They know the concerns. They're sensitive. They're appreciative of the history that's here. It's not some out-of-town, as we always used to point to Worcester or some other places. They're not that. They're Harwich people, and what they put up is going to be something they can take pride in and the town can take pride in, as it currently does today for Pine Oaks 1, 2, and 3. They're exceptional resources for the town. In Pine Oaks 4, I have every reason to believe, given the nature of what has gone on through the Pine Oaks Village group in the previous 50 years, will continue to demonstrate that excellence and sensitivity to resolving issues here in the town. I urge the board to support this project and its 40B application, and I can only say that I'm also convinced that when it is established, assuming it is established, that we can take great pride in what the town is doing to ensure that people of all economic interests are able to be residents of this great community.
Thank you. And I'd also like to just remind everybody in the audience to just not be talking because it's difficult to hear other people when they're at the podium and there's background noise, so thank you.
Good evening, Chris Nickerson. Many of you already know me. Retired road manager for the town. A couple points to what Mr. Doan so eloquently spoke to. Roundabout was paid for by Stop and Shop through a off-site traffic mitigation when they did their major expansion, as well as the traffic lights. I believe that the town had hired VHB to do a independent traffic study, which I think might be a wise situation for this. Let's not take the word of the people who want to build. Let's do our own. I now work for Robert Hour. I live on Katie's Pond Lane all summer long, trying to come home from work. Main Street's backed up to the power lines on Queen Anne Road. I get to my house, I can't get in my road because the Queen Anne 124 traffic lights are backed up past the back of my house. So I do believe there are problems with the traffic on Queen Anne Road. All you gotta do is lay awake in the morning on a Sunday and try to sleep in, and you hear the trucks go by. I concur that there is no room for bicycles on Queen Anne. I've seen too many accidents at the intersection where the bike trail crosses, to the point where the state put barriers up this year to tell people to get off their bikes. I had one other point, I don't remember it now, but again, I do encourage that the town hire VHB, the ultimate engineering firm in Massachusetts that does traffic studies. And let's do our own, let's get our own facts and trust in people that we employ and not that they employ.
Thank you, and we are in the process.
Good evening, Duncan Berry, Chair of the Town Planning Board and resident of West Harwich. I don't have a comment on the application itself, but I do have some procedural observations I'd like to make very briefly. First of all, to thank Christine Flynn for submitting the board's report in accurate form to the Select Board, so you have all of our opinions on the matter. However, I wanted to bring your attention to our item number C here in the 40A language, which I think is one of the reasons why we're all here, is that the 40A effectively obviates all land use regulatory concerns that face the town. And you'll see here, imagine if there was a conceptual project design that's generally appropriate for the site, and that was all you needed. We don't need a planning board. Well, I'm not here to argue for more work for the planning board, but I do say that we have a role to play in filtering the concerns of the public through the actual code of the town of Harwich, so that we don't have a top-down process which effectively lobs, whether we like it or not, good or not, doesn't make any difference. We're effectively having a trebuchet launch a big smoldering blast bomb located, of a huge proportion of land, a huge piece of land, without our local land use concerns taken into consideration. So that's my concern as a member of the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ella Sampu. I am not a resident of Harwich. I'm a community organizer with Community Development Partnership, which is a nonprofit that serves our year-round community through small business support.
So I'm going to ask you to hold off because this is for the people in town to have not to say that you can't speak, but
I will wait until
let
everyone else
other
has spoken.
people
Thank
hear.
you.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Harwich Center. I stand in vehement support of this project. This is not a McMansion development being built entirely for greed. This is being done by our friends and neighbors who, instead of selling their land to someone who would put up McMansions, they have created this wonderful area that in time will be a lovely place for people of all levels to live. We are desperately in need of housing. You talk about, oh, this will put a strain on the schools. No, what's putting a strain on the schools is we can't have teachers because they can't afford to live here. What's putting a strain on the fire department is we can't have firefighters because they can't afford to live here. What's putting a strain on the police force is that they cannot afford police officers who can live here. It's not just low-level bartenders that people think, oh, they can still live in their parents' basement. These are the people that we need to live here. Look at the age in this room, the average age. Do you see any young families here who are here in support of a place to live? No, because they can't be, because they're doing 3 jobs just to be able to afford living in somebody's attic. We need to be better than this. I think we're better than this. I love this town. I wasn't born here, not like the people behind Pine Oaks who were born here, whose families were born here, whose families started the town. These are not people who want to destroy Harwich. These are not people who want to change Harwich dramatically. These are people who want to keep Harwich a beautiful place to live. And we can't do that if we don't have people who can live here. Thank you.
Thank you. You can go ahead and speak, and then I'm just gonna go to some people online as well, so go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Lorian Schultz. My husband Matt and I have been Harwich residents since 1999. My children, Gage and Kaylin, have gone through the Monomoy and Harwich school systems from kindergarten to graduation. As a person who believes in volunteering, I was excited to become a part of 3 thriving senior living communities when I joined the Pine Oaks Village Homes Board of Directors in 2018. I'm a realtor with close to 25 years of experience. Helping people's housing needs and concerns have been the focus of my professional career. Questions I get all the time. Lorian, can you help me find a rental? I just got a job and I'm in transition and I need some place to live while I'm locating to and learning about the Cape. Lorian, can you help me find a rental? I want to move out of my parents' house. Lorian, can you help me find a rental? I want to downsize from the family home. Lorian, can you help me find a rental? I need an affordable place to live so I can save for a down payment on a home. The answer to these questions is almost always no. What I do have sometimes are seasonal rentals or a very, very expensive high-end rental. Massachusetts requires each town to have 10% of the housing inventory be affordable to households earning 80% or less of the area median income. Currently, Harwich has met about half of this requirement. If we don't hit that state requirement of 10%, the Commonwealth could stop the town of Harwich from receiving state funding for housing, planning, roads, bridges, water, and sewers. This would be devastating to our town. Pine Oaks Village Homes 4 would move our town of Harwich closer to the 10% state requirement. Pine Oaks Village Homes is not a big developer. We are not a church group. We are a group of local volunteers who volunteer our time, who are passionate about affordable housing, and who have the town's best interest at heart. Our desire is to work with the town, hand in hand, to make Pine Oaks Village Homes 4 a reality. I want to see young people like my kids have the ability to stay in our community and call it home for years to come. I believe safe, secure, affordable housing provides community stability. There's a lot of energy in this room and a lot of bright minds. Let's do this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt, could you see if there is anybody online that would like to speak? Okay. I just don't want to forget them. Okay, we'll go, Bernadette?
Good evening, Bernadette Waystack. Not to be redundant, some of what was already said by Elizabeth and others, but to hear it straight from a young person's mouth, I asked my daughter's permission to write what some of you may have already seen on Facebook, but straight from the perspective of a young couple with kids in town, a young couple who grew up here and for the moment are able to stay here. Kate had asked, and how many of my fellow neighbors here in Harwich who oppose this new housing opportunity are actually housing insecure? I'm going to guess not many. It's amazing how much people care about the flow of traffic while tucked away in their own 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath homes. Housing crisis is real. My son is in 2nd grade this year. There are only 4 classes of 2nd grade with between 15 and 18 kids per class. Grade levels are diminishing. Young families cannot afford to live here anymore. Our seniors cannot afford to live here anymore. A little more traffic is worth it to keep families, seniors, working community members housed. Please don't judge what others desperately need to survive just because it's not something you yourself need. A little more traffic, but also more teachers, firefighters, police officers, grocery store clerks, and families. It's worth it.
Thank you.
Christine Menard from the Family Pantry of Cape Cod. So I can't imagine what it feels like to have a very large development proposed for your backyard. But I will tell you that the Family Pantry is on track this year to serve 15,000 people. We are really lucky to have one of the largest pantries in Massachusetts in Harwich. I don't think it's a detriment to North Harwich, frankly. But the thing I do want you to understand is that the majority of our families, without question, have housing concerns. These are not migrants. These are not people that don't look like you. They are simply people that are trying to make a living. Most of our families have 2 and 3 jobs. Most of our, less than 1% of the people that we serve come every time they can. And we have households that have 10 and 15 people living in a very tiny space. And I know this is hard, but if we don't figure this out, and even if it's some kind of a compromise, density is not a bad word. I live up in the woods, there's nobody around me. If you told me you wanted to put up there, I'd be heartbroken, but I get it. Because I see it every single day. And the last time one of you can say that you missed a meal, then you have the right to complain about this. Because we can't even feed the people in this community, much less house them. I ask that you take that in consideration, and I'll deal with a little bit more traffic. I've lived here for 30 years too, and I live right off of 124. But I'll put up with the traffic, because I want to feed them, and then I want to have a decent place to live. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak?
Thank you. William Flynn, Harwich Center, Oak Street. 3/10 of a mile from Pine Oak Street, from their driveway to my door. I just want to say a few things. I agree with the people that live on Main Street in North Harwich. It's a beautiful community. A lot of great people live there and stuff. I like the person who just spoke previously. Hopefully that there is some compromise. that might be available when you start going ahead and playing with height restrictions of building and zoning. I think it's one of those ones, if I remember correctly, when I first moved here, and correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, I believe that piece of property was actually Harwich concrete block. Is that correct? Is it? No. No? Okay, so I'm thinking of the wrong property. Yeah, yes, yeah. But across the street, but no. But anyway, I worked for the Harwich Fire Department for 36 years. I wound up going ahead and taking care of a lot of people in phase at 1 and 2 over in Bank Street. They are people that live here. A lot of them are widows. A lot of them are people that don't even have a car when they're living in this community. It's one of those things, as far as me and family friends, I presently have one family friend who is 97 years old. She lives in an apartment across the street from Harwich Port House of Pizza. She's been on that list for God knows how long, trying to go ahead and get out of an apartment that at least has some kind of control, because we all know that we're living longer, and we all know that the little nest eggs that we all wound up going ahead and put together on ourselves in the town of Harwich isn't going to last too freaking long, because the way that housing has gone up and stuff, these people are freaking struggling, and they're struggling bad. Another individual that I know, family friend, they've lived in Harwich for years. Their kids wound up going ahead and initially had to have the mother go ahead and live in the basement, as somebody said before. And it's one of those things, she finally wound up getting some affordable housing, but had to move out of Harwich and move to Orleans. And she finally, just after being on the list for God knows how long, wound up being able to go ahead and move into one of the John Nelson properties and stuff. If you haven't been in John Nelson Way, in particular, go to the one on Bank Street. It's beautiful. Pine Oaks Village does a beautiful, beautiful job taking care of these places. They do a beautiful job. There's a nestled community in there. The people are very supportive of one another. It's really a beautiful development. 100 units in there. It's gorgeous. We're next to my neighborhood, Layton's Lane. Forgive me, I don't know how many units are in there. Like I said, I live 3/10 of a mile from the main entrance of this thing. They're not really the bothersome, and I don't want to say bothersome. I'm glad the golf course is there. I'm glad the school's there. I'm glad the community center's there and stuff. But on the other hand, when you take a look at what the number of apartments and the effective traffic that is there, it's pretty minimal compared to the different things that go on in the town of Harwich. So me, like I say, when it comes time to the height description, reasoning, when it comes time for the zoning, that's a bad game to get into play. But I do truly feel that I think that there is some kind of compromise to go ahead and build something in that particular area that really fits the neighborhood and also meets these people who have lived in Harwich for years, and they're at the point where they can't afford things because they're in their 80s, 90s, and they don't have the money left anymore. They don't have the support of family here because they cannot live here. So my hope from all this is I hope that there is some kind of compromise so that we can at least get some kind of John Nelson property in that area. Because do me a favor, take a look, drive through the one at Bank Street, drive through the one that's down my street. They're really quite nice, and I do feel, yes, that is a big number. Yes, I don't like when they screw with zoning. And yes, I don't like when they wind up playing games with height restrictions on buildings and so on. But I do hope that we can go ahead and consider some compromise so at least we can take care of the people that live in the town of Harwich, that are struggling to stay in the town of Harwich, and I hope that something works out on that. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Where is the young woman from CDP that wanted to speak? You're welcome.
Good evening again. My name is Ella Sampu. I'm a community organizer with Community Development Partnership. We're a nonprofit that supports the year-round community through support for small businesses and the creation and support of affordable housing. It's occurring to me now, but maybe I should lead with this. Maybe I would be a resident in Harwich if there was a place for me to live here. Before this meeting, I looked on Zillow for rental apartments. There are 7, and there is not a single apartment listed for less than $2,200. I cannot afford that. In general, the average Harwich resident makes $79,000 a year, but to buy a home in Harwich, they would need to make almost $217 because the average cost of a home is $700,000. I heard a lot of comments tonight about zoning and about how zoning protects us in our way of life. I would like to make the case that zoning does not protect all of us and in fact excludes many. Many people who work in this town or historically who could have lived in this town cannot afford a single family home on a 1-acre lot. That does not protect our community, it in fact erodes it. We talked a lot about traffic as well. Most of the comments I heard were about traffic from industrial or commercial practices, not about residential traffic. The Cape Cod Commission noted in a study a couple years ago that roughly 50% of Cape Cod's workforce comes from over the bridge because they cannot afford to live here. I would like to make the case or raise the question that creating more housing in this town would actually cut down on traffic. People are not going to be getting on and off the highway to commute over the bridge if people who work in this town are able to live here. Everyone is here tonight because they think Harwich is a special place. And I'd like to offer that by creating this housing, by approving this 40B, we allow other people to experience how special Harwich is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, Ed?
Ed McManus, Parallel Street, Harwich Center. I've been serving on the local plan, comprehensive plan review committee, and I'm not speaking for the committee in any way, but through that process, we've studied a lot of data about Harwich and what's been happening here in our town and neighboring towns on the Cape. And what we find is that one of the most significant problems we face is the issue of housing. If you look at the data, we are out-migrating young people because they can't find a place to live here. We have problems filling critical jobs because folks come and they interview, they think it's a wonderful place, but before they sign and take a job, they find out that they can't find a place to live. I was on the board of directors of Outer Cape Health Services, and that was the #1 reason why folks decided not to take a job there. I've been a client there since before they moved to Harwich, but I'm one of the lucky ones because I've only had 2 practitioners in my 18 years with them. My wife, on the other hand, has unfortunately gone through 7 practitioners because people come, they work a bit, and they find it's just too hard to find housing, and they move on. She's actually spent a good portion of that 18 years without a practitioner assigned to her because they just didn't have the staff to do it. And, you know, given the age I see in the room, having enough doctors and healthcare professionals is sort of pretty critical to this town, given the age that we are all getting to be. So I would, obviously there are issues that you're going to have to deal with. The proposers are going to have to deal with in designing this and building this out to make sure that problems are dealt with over time. And I'm sure that we can do that. But if this is one of the things that we need to develop in Harwich if we're to maintain being a vital, alive community with people who live and work here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Is there anybody else in the other room who, go ahead. Also, just anybody in the other room who wants to speak, please come in to the podium if you do.
My name is Phyllis Kushlanis, and I live in East Harwich. I've been on the board of directors of Pine Oaks for 21 years. I am extremely proud of the work that we've done and the 3 locations that we already have in Harwich that provide housing at this point just for seniors. It's about time somebody started working for young people, young families, single people, and other that there's nothing out there that provides for them. My grandson is one of the people that you will see on Facebook that is looking, that would love to have a place of his own, but lives with his grandmother and his father. So I'm well aware of what that situation is. The Pine Oaks 1, 2, and 3, as you gentlemen just described, are beautiful places. When each one of those was in the process of obtaining property and development, we had this whole scenario. Everybody objected. The traffic was a big thing. One of the things that we want to emphasize is that Pine Oaks, we're willing to work with the town. There's got to be solutions for the traffic. That's the main objective I hear here, is traffic. It definitely needs to be addressed, but as a community, we should address it. The Pine Oaks villages are beautiful places, and I've heard some complaints about the industrial areas and so on and so forth on Queen Anne Road. Our architects, our board, our committee, we're working very hard and have gone through several iterations trying to make the most beautiful place so people could have their own homes that are nice, that they're proud of. Trying to get a good balance between as many units as we can for people that can afford it, while still designing the whole complex so that there's walking trails and keeping as much nature as possible. So there's a lot of work, a lot gone into this, and we are really, really passionate about providing this housing. I'd just like to tell you, one of the main questions that people ask me when they know I'm on the board of directors is, how long do I have to wait for an application? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Lisa, and Lisa Smith. I live in Queen Anne Road, near the 124 intersection. And I came in a little late because I just came from work, so I apologize if I'm redundant.
Yeah.
And I'm not completely, I got some information about this, and we need affordable housing, there's no doubt. I guess my concern often is what I'm seeing around Cape, is it's not going to the locals the way it should. So how do we know that's happening is one of my concerns. How do we know it's going to go to the local kids that need it and not some people off Cape? Also, what are we going to do with people like me? My house is very close set to the road when you have to widen the road. And it's my concern. It's going to affect me. I live very close to the intersection. In the summer, I can have a hard time getting out into the road and into traffic. It's, we need housing, so we all will deal with it, but you can't forget about those of us who are here as well. I've been here a long time, and I want to keep my house. It's the only thing I have, so it's that end of it as well. But how do we know that we are going to be providing housing for locals? And is it going to be cheaper than the $2,200 that's out there on the market now? That's already unaffordable for people. Those are just some of my questions. I don't even know where to get them answered.
Well, there'll be a whole process about the project being vetted, and it'll be with the zoning board, and then we have interdepartmental questions to be raised as well, and then this board will obviously be discussing it at a future point in time. But currently, we're just looking for the public's input on the pros and cons.
So those are all kind of questions to be answered before it's actually decided upon?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, Duncan's.
What?
Wanted to follow up.
Yeah, did you, I know, I was going before. I'm going to board members to see if you have any specific question. Oh.
Say one other thing real quick. I've already been up.
Teresa Johnson, North Harwich. Pine Oaks Village 1 has 60 units. Pine Oaks Village 2 has 38 units. So a total of 98 units on 30 acres. Pine Oaks Village 3 has 65 units on 12 acres. They're all single-story buildings. Why are they building this monstrosity 3 levels of living space, 248 units on 30 acres, versus Pine Oaks Village 1 and 2, 98 units on 30 acres. Why not conform to what they already have, the same style?
So all of these things will be vetted as we go through the process, so.
Okay.
So all of these comments are for the record, as the town administrator mentioned at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, oh, go ahead, sure.
Thank you. Bob Doan, resident of Harwich and Vice President of Pine Oaks Villages. I really appreciate all the comments, both pro and some that have the concerns. We are definitely want to work as much as we can to solve some of these issues. Some of these we may not be able to. We definitely want to supply housing to Harwich. And I just want to point out that our contribution to the Shy List will be very substantial, and our project is not something that's going to just pop up in 2 years. Just because of the timing and money and raising money from the state, it's going to be a 10-year project, so nothing's going to radically change starting off. It's going to be very slow, which I hope will allow the town to take a look at Queen Anne and make recommendations and possibly apply for some grants to make improvements. And there are quite a few grants available for specifically housing and road work. Do want to just reiterate, we are not a church. We are not affiliated with the church. So there should be no concern with that. The traffic study, we encourage a peer review of our study. In fact, through the 40B process, when we get to the next step, that is, they recommend doing peer reviews. And we certainly encourage that, to look at our traffic study and look at where there may be deficiencies in our traffic study. And I'm glad the town's doing a whole big study to look, I mean, that's going to be a long-term study. I hope that really projects out for many years what to do in that part of town and elsewhere too in town. You know, and as far as the look, we have put a lot of effort into designing a building that does look attractive, that doesn't look like the dormitories down in South Harwich, which are 3 floors. And we've made a very good effort to do that. And furthermore, because of the way the land is, we are allowed to put it in so you don't see it on Queen Anne. Yeah, in the winter you might see through the leaves, but you're not going to see big buildings on the edge of the road or anything like that. And we've really tried to scale them down so that they look, the townhouses particularly look like they're only 2 stories, but they have, on a couple of them, they are 3 floors to accommodate 3-bedroom families. Again, we appreciate the input, and we look forward to your approval for the eligibility letter, and really look forward to working with the ZBA to work out differences and different thoughts that people would like to have than what we've already proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, just one more time. Chris Nickerson again, North Harwich. Just a reminder that any road improvements that are going to happen on that stretch of Queen Anne Road are going to require private property takings. Pay attention to where the telephone poles are on Queen Anne. They're at the back of the road layout. So any road widenings, any sidewalks, or any bike lanes, they're going to have to be built to accommodate pedestrians and more traffic. Are going to require every property owner along that road to give up land.
Thank you. So not hearing anybody else who wants to talk, and Matt, is there anybody with a hand up online? Okay, thanks. I'm going to go to board members with any specific questions for department heads who are out in the hall and listening. If anybody, I know, Dawn, you had a question for Duncan, if we want to start there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, recognizing we're not going to...
I don't mean to interrupt you, but is Duncan still out?
Yeah, he's right here.
He's right there, sorry.
Madam Chair, if I could, not all department heads are present. There may also be some online.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Dawn, go ahead.
That's fine. I think we can all agree, we're not trying to build this tonight. We're not even approving it tonight. Right here, we're involved with a request for a project eligibility letter, and I'm going to try to focus on that initially. I know, Duncan, that you had wanted to be, or the board had wanted to be part of the process. How long was it that you were given in order to opine on it, from the time that you received what is not a complete package until the deadline that you were asked to meet?
I think we received the links to the material on last Tuesday, and we needed to get a response in by, I think it was Thursday noon, kind of thing. So it wasn't we weren't given the full, like a comprehensive opportunity.
Did you feel you had an opportunity to actually thoroughly look over everything?
Well, I don't know exactly how many members of the board ended up finally submitting. 2. So.
But you didn't have time to post or do anything like that.
Right. So my thought is that was probably a under-leveraged use of the talent on that board.
Thank you.
Any other
Madam
board-
Chair, I would just ask,
Yep.
the Director of Planning and Community Development has some response to that as well?
Sure. Can you come up to the podium?
Yep.
Christine Flynn, Director of Planning. Just one quick correction. When we were given the material, when department heads were given the materials on Friday, September 13th, I had forwarded the written materials to the planning board on the 17th. But we weren't able to discuss it as a board until last Tuesday.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any specific questions for department heads currently, or do you want to move on to item B?
Madam Chair,
Michael?
not sure if I have questions, but I do have comments on some of what was written, and I also have a procedural question.
Sure.
To the town administrator through you, we're here talking about a project tonight, and we haven't gotten the complete application yet, nor has the public. So how are we going to, and when are we going to address the state and ask for the extension, and how likely are we going to be able to get it? Because I quite frankly feel uncomfortable not having sections 3 and 4 in my packet as a board member, let alone the folks in the audience being able to read it and understand what it means.
So that's item B on our agenda.
Okay, I'll hold
Could I-
on that
could I-
until then.
Could I further add to that? As you heard the chair say, that's your next item on the agenda. I've asked staff, and I've also talked to council myself. I believe your council is of the opinion that the state will grant it, and I know staff has worked with the consultants that we'll rely upon as the town, as we're allowed to, has also suggested that we seek it and should get it. The disconcerting part of it is, wasn't just the Director of Planning and Community Development who responded, it wasn't just Town Administrator, it wasn't just the Clerk of the Select Board, it was also the Chair of the Select Board. So we will continue to follow up with them. Again, part of this public input, I would have imagined that we would have heard the site visit location and date, because my understanding of section 3 of 56.04 is that part of the review include a site visit. So I think there's a number of deficiencies where the town should be able to prevail, but that's your item B discussion.
And if I may, Madam Chair?
Sure.
The site visit, all of that happens prior to the state issuing the eligibility letter?
That's my understanding, correct.
Okay. Hopefully that's true. I would just say that the word compromise was used earlier by the speaker from the pantry, and I think compromise is a great word. I don't believe we've really compromised on anything yet. The proposal that has been put forward is the same proposal that we've been looking at for quite some time. Several of the speakers talked about traffic, and traffic seems to be the most contentious issue. And you don't have to be an engineer to look at the traffic on Queen Anne Road and know that we have a problem. Anybody that's willing to go out there and drive those roads in the morning and the afternoon knows that there's a problem. It's undisputable. And we want to talk about just truck traffic, as somebody from an organization spoke of. It's a lot more than truck traffic. The numbers that you heard tonight from the dump are real numbers, and those aren't trucks. Some of them are pickup trucks, but they're not the 18-wheelers. Sticking a project out in the woods in North Harwich, as it was previously said, seems to be something that a lot of people are okay with. We've had a lot of commentary, or I have, and I know other board members have had emails that are in our packet, and it's people from all over the place. If this was going on in East Harwich, and they were clear cutting this much, or Harwich Port or Harwich Center, we would have needed to go to the community center tonight. But because of where it sits, it seems like there's some traction. Pine Oaks is a great organization, and they've done a great job for the town of Harwich. Absolutely undeniable, the projects that are there. This project is of such a scale that it's quite different, and we're talking about something else. And I'll tell you, I grew up in this town, born and raised. My parents worked for the town in 2 different departments for 30 years apiece. 3 of my daughters went to Harwich High School. 1 ended up at Monomoy High School. And I feel the same struggles that everybody else does as far as housing goes. So everyone talking about young people and looking for housing, I feel that too. But creating an emergency to solve another one is something that we all should look at, and what we're going to create. Now, phase, and speaking directly to the eligibility letter, phase 1 of this project sounds great. Coming back years later and looking at actual raw data on what it means to the school, what it means to traffic, also sounds sensible to me. But that's not sensible to the developers, because it's not going to make sense for them permit-wise. There's a lot of things in the report from the department heads, which I'll speak on, and I'll try and keep it brief. The best one, I think, is the assessing director. It was a really interesting document from the assessing director. And if you look at the one it's a Pine Oaks exhibit of the properties, it's not even closely matching what our assessing department gave us. It's not even close. And I would encourage everybody to read it and send your comments in on that. But those parcels, there's a lot of problems with them. Unless our assessing department, I see the fellow developer in the back nodding his head back and forth, but I would encourage the developer and the Pine Oaks Village to work with our assessing department, because the report we got that you can all read tonight doesn't match at all. And I noticed there's a parcel in there that was purchased by Mid-Cape Homes, Church Homes, for $500,000, and 2 weeks later transferred to another organization for $1. And then there was a lot of parcels in this that ultimately you can look at, and I really have questions based on what our assessing department announced today in said memo, or not today, September 19th. It leads me to believe that a lot of these parcels are not being taxed, and that they're work in progress. I see more shaking of head from Pine Oaks developers, but unless you're calling our assessing department liars, I would encourage you to look at it. So it doesn't match at all. That's one. In almost every case a department head review, they cited an increase in cost of their departments. Also something as taxpayers we ought to plan. Should we just absorb that? In a never-ending budget cycle, should we just ignore the fact that every one of the department heads said that their programs were going to go up and things were going to go up? And I'm not against this project in totality, but starting at 248, and that's a great smile, Greg. There's conservation. They don't have a reviewed, and this goes to eligibility, and I hope the board will want this in the packet to the state. They don't have a stamped engineered plan yet, or we don't have a stamped. So conservation really had to weigh in on this letter and this phase with no information, just conversations from those who were selling it. Herring River. It is known that it's an impaired water body. The application states from Pine Oaks Village, environmental impacts unknown. That's comforting. I ultimately think that some of these questions, before we get to where we're at today, should have been answered. I know Patrick would appreciate that. Application, page 72 of their packet, which is not in our packet tonight, and it's part of what's missing, says land disturbance unknown. Not sure what that means either. Page 59, number 59, page 23 of their application to the state. Is site located in wetland, in wetland? And there's other. The answer from them is no. Conservation Commission cited wetlands on the property and vernal pools. So what is the question? What is the answer to the question? I again believe the application to the state is incomplete, and these need to be pointed out. I won't read the entire list, but anyone that wants to see them can find me tomorrow, and I got half a book written. Number 60 in same application, endangered species, animals, or plants. Nowhere is the study. There is no study done on this yet whatsoever. So are we going to submit this and expect the state to weigh in on this? And I know on another project, Chloe's Path in Harwich Center, this was all a very, very big issue. This seems to me to be being driven, and there's nothing to see here, very much like we learned from the same attorney involved in this on Love Lane. There's nothing to see here. Keep your eyes closed. It's going to be fine. And the residents really need to pay attention, for or against, because it's going to impact your town forever. Planning. Topography uneven, significant grading, fill, and drainage. Again, Herring River wetland, where is that going to go? Significant amount of fill, significant amount of grading and drainage. Where does the water go? Being in that water body. Recommended by, I believe, the town planner, more comprehensive site plan and survey to better assess potential environmental impacts. Shouldn't we get there before we look for eligibility? Shouldn't have that been part of this application? And if it exists, because I am getting some nods that it might, where is it? Shouldn't it be part of a public hearing? Shouldn't the residents get to weigh in on the actual facts? I can go on and on. I'm going to stop because I'm sure the chair wants me to. Certainly exceeded my
3 minutes are up.
But the real point is, there is room for compromise, as that was said. But the only reason we're going for 248 units now is for development costs. And if we started off on a small project, it would certainly gain a lot of support from a lot of people, and then we'd have data to move forward. And it wouldn't just be a proponent seeking 250 units and getting it. The thought of Pine Oaks rescuing us from our 10% mandatory state number that was written in 1969 is also interesting. We're forgetting about the fact that the town of Harwich, you, taxpayers, just put an RFP out and it has been accepted for 60 units, 90 beds, just around the block from that on 124. So we're not sitting on our hands and not doing anything for housing, and housing should be spread out around town. We're proposing now 90 beds and another 500, but we'll just say we'll use units because we know that number, 248 units and 60 units, all within 2 square miles on an already overtaxed roadway system. And let's not take away from the fact that the old Marcelline's junkyard is a giant commercial property. And you can only imagine what's going to go there. So I don't want to hear that we should be waiting and working with somebody years down the road, because that's what it's going to take for our tax dollars to fix all of the problems created by this, because we can't do it up front. And somebody said we are better. I believe it was somebody, a speaker in the back row. We are better than this. We are better than this. Let's not approve something and get something done before we actually do the work and show the impact and the cost to the taxpayers.
Jeff? It's going to be fun to follow that, I'll tell you. A lot of fun to follow that. I did write a couple of notes. First, I would sincerely and humbly like to thank the public for... I just started talking. You're already leaving? I just started. I would like to thank the public for coming out and being so enthusiastic, whether you're in support or not in support. That's exactly how town government should work, and I'm thrilled, honestly, to be a part of it here tonight. I'd also like to thank Pine Oaks Village leadership. I believe they're doing a hell of a job being transparent and available. They are always willing to answer questions. I believe 100% they're being transparent. This is a huge project, and not everything is cut and dry. This is not a linear trajectory that we are on. I feel a lot of residents, at least in the communications I've had, feel that the 40B process is kind of jumping straight over the public and not allowing what I would consider and what many consider to be the way our town government should work toward development. I'm just saying what I've been told. I don't think this was always a 40B project. I think this became a 40B project. Maybe I'm wrong. I would like to know why it changed from what it was to a 40B project, and I'm sure we can get the answers at some point. I don't think it's that big of a question. I also support Phase 1. I also think Phase 1 is a fantastic idea. I think the scope of the project, as Select Board Member McCaskill mentioned, is big. Mr. Flynn discussed compromise. I think that's a perfect word for this project. I think compromise, this isn't an either-or, in my opinion. And it shouldn't be viewed as either-or. This is not a zero-sum game. This is not, this is about trade-offs. In order to get housing, and when I ran for the Select Board, and prior to even thinking about running for the Select Board, housing, I mean, it was housing everywhere you turned, housing. Well, now we have a real opportunity to work as a collective group, the town, the developers, to make something meaningful happen. And again, I'm really happy to be a part of that. But to Mr. McCaskill, I'm not going to repeat everything because I had the exact same questions. We're missing part of the packet. I believe our assessing department, I mean, I've highlighted lists here about some controversial pieces of properties. Some of them taxes haven't been paid on. Some of them were split. Some of them, you know,
There were no deeds.
Sandra Hall is involved in this, and there's no deeds. Her deed reference is one thing, but the parcel should be another parcel somewhere else. I think these are all things that before this board discusses the project eligibility, these need to be cleaned up. And I'm not saying that I'm not for the project, or I'm against the project, or for the project. I'm just saying that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the last thing I'll say is, I'm truly happy that this is a long process, because it needs, every step of the way needs to be vetted by the public, by departments, by our town administrator, who's doing a heck of a job with this. I think this is a long project, and it needs to be a long project. Conservation, Concom weighed in with a very thoughtful and well-thought-out narrative. Mr. McCaskill read quite a bit of it. But at the end of the day, more information, for me at least. So, again, thank you all for being here, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
I won't repeat much of what's been said. The only point is there are questions to be answered.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you.
Don, did you have any follow-up?
Yeah, building off of that, that's the reason I asked Duncan here. There was no time to actually put together a posting, and I'm sure it wasn't just for the planning board. I'm not prepared to say anything about the merits of the project. There's still things that are missing in it, and I'd really like them to be done so that everybody has the assurance, whether you're for it or against it, that the questions in the submission are answered. If you're missing two parts of it, and there's a number of parts that were filled out we feel aren't accurately filled out, just start. If you're not, you have to start out right. I mean, if everything is incomplete, the way to assuage everybody's concerns is putting together the package so that we get the whole thing, and you review again what's the answer to indigenous wildlife or any peculiarities that have to do with plants there. Just run through the process again. Look through it again, and we will need more time, because that's the problem, is the project eligibility letter is due like really shortly, and that kind of locks in the whole process from there on in. It would be really nice to start the right way.
Thank you, Don. And I would just concur with my colleagues' statements, and I would also say, you have to start with the stamp site plan. We need to understand, conservation has acutely pointed out, buffer zones are missing, there's topography issues, there's stormwater issues, we have the Herring River, on top of the fact that we have massing issues based on topography that will be emphasized by the current design. So there's a lot of things that this board needs to look at, which leads me to item B in terms of getting the board's consensus. Sure, go ahead, Bob. But getting that consensus on requesting the extension.
Yeah, I want to answer, or try to answer some of the concerns you have. First, on the missing parts, has the state clarified what is that they didn't send?
No, the state's non-responsive. We've been
Okay,
able to
so-
gather, if I could continue, we've been able to gather from their emails, where they told us we'll be receiving 4 emails. They've described it as the letter itself, which we have, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 5.
Right.
We have deduced, therefore, that the missing email probably contains Parts 3 and 4.
Okay. So I believe it is my understanding that the missing parts are just more of the application, because I believe the one came from the state is maybe 140 pages, and what's missing are the confidential deeds and prices and instruments, and I suspect, if anything, that's why the state did not send them, but I don't know that for a fact, that that's their policy. Indeed, you do have the whole application, all 240 pages, because on the day that we had to submit to the state, we are required to submit to the town, and a copy was sent both to Julie and town administrator, and that does have all the information, the whole application. And I know some people have said that they think this is the phases that's missing. Well, 2 and 3 phases are missing, and I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's just part of the application. So I think that if you look into that, that's really what the issue is there. And you do actually have the information that you could, if you choose to, I believe you could publish it. I don't know if there are any restrictions, but you'd have to understand from the state on that. I also want to talk...
Can I just ask you, as part of that package then, is there a stamped site plan for starters?
The package, we do have a site plan. We submitted everything we had to do with the state.
Mhm.
So that is what they've asked for, we've given it. But we do have additional information. And I just want to say that our engineers have tried to approach the town to meet like conservation, and rebuffed because we don't have an application available. And so that was the case, and I came before you, 6 months ago, and wanted to do the traffic report and get a study or understand what our engineer said, but it was, you don't have an application in. So now I assume that you have an application, and I can now have all my engineers approach the town department. We have the whole conservation plan, we have a wildlife plan. Those aren't asked for in the letter of eligibility. That stuff really comes more in the second part, where you go through the ZBA. But we're more than happy to share everything we have now, and would love to talk to all your departments, clear up the understanding about the lots. There's totally, we have a whole thing on that we can show you, but please let us work with the departments, and we'll start right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
We received from the state for the letter of eligibility and the information from the state that we were going to go over, correct? And it was missing sections 3 and 4 with no explanation, correct?
Right, and we followed up.
Right. So therefore, our packet tonight is for a letter of eligibility and public comment. And with all due respect to Bob Doan and a former colleague of mine, Mary Anderson, said, when you say that, you don't mean it. I do mean it, with all due respect. The public has had no opportunity to look at said documents that you were just talking about. So we're going to have another one of these after we go through this. And it's not about working with our department heads. First, it's about us wrapping our heads around it and the public wrapping their heads around it. And then we can get into the department head part of it. But everything that I mentioned and a lot more is missing from the application, including wetland information. It's missing. So everybody that came here tonight didn't have the opportunity to discuss it or pose questions. So I would like to have everything, and the public to have everything, or at least an explanation that they're omitted documents, so that we can proceed with our questions.
Why don't we go to,
That would be B.
B, exactly. So why don't we go to B? Elizabeth, what, yeah.
I'm confused, because I've seen a plan. When, as Bob said, when
So
he
we're talking
submitted
about
all
the
this stuff,
documents that.
we've seen it.
So
You have it.
Elizabeth.
I don't
so-
know why you guys
All right,
didn't get it.
Elizabeth, so what I'm trying to say, if you'll let me speak, is that the materials officially sent to us, we do not have that. That's what we're saying. So the official transmission has not come through in full to our board.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask you, don't blame them for that, because they've done what
So
they're
again,
supposed to do.
Elizabeth,
It's
we're not
not
blaming
their
anybody, and I'm
fault
going to ask you to
you
let us
didn't get the
move
information.
along. Thank you.
That's a representative.
So ultimately, we're on item B. Joe?
Thank you. So I may have taken it away too soon, but my friend in the corner says 760 CMR, which is shorthand for Commonwealth of Massachusetts regulation. So 56.00 is the regulation. This is literally a regulated act. And under 56.04, project eligibility and other responsibilities. What is not shown is item number 3, which says the chief executive body, you folks, the select board, have a 30-day window to review the materials provided by the subsidizing agency. So that is the concern that the town has, and that's why you have item B. Because we are all acting in good faith that if the state determines that the 4th email with the 2 parts missing is not germane, then we've covered the parts that we have. But if they do indicate that the parts are germane, the town would seek whatever level of extension they're allowed to provide to that 30-day review. So that's why I've asked you to discuss this matter under your agenda, and I would urge you to direct me to ask the state for an extension.
So moved.
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. Any discussion, further discussion? Pete?
30 days.
Joe, you had alluded to council opined that they thought it was likely that you would receive the extension?
Correct.
Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah. They didn't give us, council doesn't have a sense of how much time would be granted. So the guidance is to leave the request, but suggest something in the order of 30 days.
And Madam Chair, if I could
Sure.
continue, but clearly, one, we haven't received a response from the folks who sent us this information to date. So what are the odds we get a response from the Commonwealth on our request? That's kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Sure.
Not really, but, so with that said, I assume we'll be prepared to take our vote
Next week,
within the
correct.
next week, in the next
Correct.
meeting, because we may not have a response at that moment.
Correct. That's, we've been operating with the understanding, or the assumption, that while we can ask for it, well, I'm not operating under the assumption that you're going to grant it. That's for you to decide. But were you to grant it, we're not operating under the assumption that we would necessarily get it. That's why we continue to proceed with the materials as soon as we got them.
So we've got a motion and a second, and to Don's point, you want to amend?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that you were asking for a 30-day extension because there was no time frame.
To Joe's point, they were thinking of leaving it open because perhaps the Commonwealth can't grant the 30. I'm happy to consider that, but if they're only allowed a 15, I don't want them to deny our request.
Right.
I don't know what they're allowed to offer.
I would pitch that we would like
Perhaps we
to
outline it
ask
as
for the
maximum.
30.
Yeah, why don't we say
Maximum.
maximum? Yeah. Okay, so you made the motion, right? So are you good with maximum?
Yes.
That work?
Okay, so any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I would request a recess, but before you do that, if anybody wants to submit any further documentation, I would just ask that if you can get it to me by noon on Thursday. So it's already on the website, but jpowers@harwich-ma.gov. And that's because I want to have a draft back to the board with all the content sent to you on Friday, so you can vote it on Monday, the 7th. So again, jpowers@harwich-ma.gov. And I do want to offer my thanks to all the board committee chairs and all the department heads, and certainly the staff in the administration department as we've been working through this process, and appreciate everyone's input and patience.
Thank you, and I'm just noting that Thursday is October 3rd.
Thank you.
Right. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and sharing your feedback. It's important for all of us in the process as we vet it and move forward. So thank you to everybody, including our applicant. Thank you.
Everybody be able to talk next week too, October 7th?
I don't think, so, yeah, you have to go to the microphone to ask the question and state your name again for the record.
So next Monday, will it be the similar setup, October 7th, that the public can talk again?
Next Monday, we'll be looking to vote on our letter that you'll be putting together.
Correct.
And so we're not looking to do another public input session at that next week's meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Well, Madam Chair, if I could, I was given great advice, I may as well take it. For the emails, any submissions, subject line would just be POVH4, we know what that means. So again, POVH4, jpowers@harwich-ma.gov.
Thank you, Joe. All right, so we'll move on to,
Take a brief recess.
oh, yeah, sorry, we'll take a brief recess. And if you just clear the halls and all, so that when we resume our meeting, there's not extended talking. Thank you.
You came up too soon.
We just did B, am I right?
Yeah, we did the.
Thank you.
Yes. Charlie, thank you for coming.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
How you doing, Peter?
How you doing?
Good.
Excellent, good to see you.
Hey, you too. You guys did a good job, but that's a lot of information. A lot to manage. Holy moly.
Yeah, well, you know, it's... I get it.
That's the thing, like the public hearing, it felt like everybody got their initial... Oh, okay. Oh, you okay? I know we're building insurance has been like 4 years. But what we thought was going to take what it actually took. So much stuff.
I mean, we also have our...
Not at all. You know, I was thinking, yeah. Basic, especially when you're building like just for the pouring foundation, you need building this and that, all the.
Jeez, I like this setup. I think
You can be there, I make the decisions. You can sit there every week, talking about it.
Exactly. But hey, it feels good when you finally get near the finish line.
Right, exactly.
So do you work on the Cape? I can tell. Oh, good, all right, that's good.
When I said
Yeah, good.
it was one of those things that came in, it's not. I don't know. Very we obviously have no. I
A lot of people got trolled because of these live bites.
Which this could be monumental.
So that, and that whole elephant, I don't know what's going on, but that should be the next part. When I was ready, I asked Mike, no, we're just gonna get them to the town so we can both do this. It's so much more than 5, 6 hours. You got, so I've got a question since you're both here.
Thank you.
We didn't have time to meet as a board. That's what Julie had. I mean, Carly did that herself. I think she might have had some input.
But even if it's only a third right.
Hey, it's good to see you.
You saw the form I'm looking at tonight. We're meeting to formalize policy, so that when we get into any of these, we can say, okay, I'm looking forward to watching the debate.
Hey, how you doing, Greg? Good to see you.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't want to. Just say hi to Scott. How are you?
And that's Stenson. Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Well, there's only one truth on the other side, right?
All right, who else are we missing?
Do you want me to yell at him and get up?
Whatever he wanted, he's very eager.
All right, I'm looking for Don Howell. Where is he?
Don Howell, painting Don Howell.
Okay, we're gonna call the Board of Selectmen meeting back to order. Excuse me. Is this on?
You gotta use it. You gotta.
Hello, I had to do it. No one can hear me. I'm calling the board meeting back to, from our recess. So if we could have everybody who's having separate conversations leave the room, thank you. Nothing works. All right.
Matt, are we good? Thank you.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, under your new business A, I'm joined this evening by our interim finance director and town accountant, Eric Kinshirf. As you know, your Harwich Town Charter requires under clause 9-2, 9-2-2, which is the chapter 9, the financial chapter of our charter, that a current financial assessment be provided to you And the charter further dictates that on or before the first Tuesday, so we're going to rely upon next Monday, for you to craft a budget message that I will then distribute to everybody. Not surprising at all, when I met with the finance director, and I advised him of the particulars of the town of Harwich, as we find it in the charter. I had mentioned to him about the budget message, and, well, we sort of stumbled upon a level service message, which is not cut or anything like that, but before you get there, we thought it would be very helpful for Eric to go through preliminary data that he has, with this being the last day of the last month of the first quarter of our fiscal year. I hope I've dug a deep enough hole for you, my friend.
No,
With that, Madam Chair, I turn it over to Mr. Kincher.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And like I said, after I get through with this, this information, at the end, if there's something that you wanted to see and didn't see or whatever, just let me know. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. So just as an overview, just as a follow-up to what we discussed last time about closing the books, we're still on track as a team to try to get that Department of Revenue certification for free cash into the state by October 16th. And then after that, hopefully they'll certify it in a timely manner. I know I mentioned the figure $5 million in free cash. I mean, we're kind of looking at that range, I'd say, right now as we're looking at everything. So as far as like the current year goes, I treated this kind of just like I treat my own business. You're 25% through the year. So I figure you should be 25% revenues, 25% expenses, just like a super broad stroke without looking at the detail.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Sure.
Don had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because you and I have talked about this,
Sure.
just to make sure that the public and everyone else is on the same page, what you are doing is, it is not possible to recalculate the current year's free cash. What you are doing is calculating fiscal 25's free cash. Is that correct?
That is correct. The free cash that's going to be available to spend in fiscal year 25 based upon fiscal year 24 operating results.
Okay, that's all I wanted to make sure everybody understood.
That's exactly right. So, thanks for that clarification. So I'm kind of, so basically we're 25% through the year, and without going into a huge detail right now, if I directed your attention to page 14 of the handout, it just gives the total of all the revenues to date, actuals versus budgeted, and it's funny that it's at 25.6% there, and if you look on page 50, which is kind of like near the last page of your packet, and
My numbers are not matching.
no.
Not even
Oh, sorry.
Not even close. But thanks.
So they're looking at the PDF.
Oh, you look, all right, so let me rephrase, yeah.
It's just numbers.
maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Just
Yeah.
a number.
So,
dated September 26th.
all right, so this is what they,
Correct.
all right, so this one says, all right,
Is it the FY 2024 local receipt comparison? Is that what we're looking at?
no,
Page 3.
it's the report after that. I'm kind of skipping on. The report after that is kind of a munis report. And I think it starts with page 1 on the bottom right. If you look, it says general fund revenue.
Yeah.
Yep, so if you go to the 8th page of that report, and the bottom right, you'll see a number like 25%. So that's kind of what I alluded to, is like the total revenues are about 25, we've collected like 25% of when this report was run. So on broad strokes, that seemed like it was, kind of on track. Now, just real broad strokes too, we're gonna go to, after that next page, you're gonna see a report that says general fund expenses. another munis report, and then the bottom right says page 1. If you go all the way to the end, the last page of that report, I think it says page 35. If you look on where it says percentage used, that means we've spent 27% of the budget so far, and we're, 25% through the year. So that's, I know somebody mentioned the word linear, like that's the linear methodology of looking at it real quick. But if you look at the detail, there are reasons for different things. So I just wanted to let you know that as far as the current year goes, I'd say we're pretty much on track. Now, the second thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention, I know there was discussion, we talked about the local receipts, to kind of dig into that a little bit. And I told you that I would get you a report that gives you the detail of all the different local receipts. So now I'm looking at the first 4 pages, it's in the Excel. Basically what we did is we just compared 23 actuals to 24 actuals to see what the differences were. So I'll just do some quick little highlights there. So on the first page, the motor vehicle excise, we collected $299,000 more than we did the year before. So obviously that's a good thing. I think some of that had to do with slow billing the year before or what have you. The meals tax and hotel tax, big increase from FY23. As you can see, the hotel tax was like $519,000. I think, I'm not that familiar with Harwich, but I don't know if Harwich passed that law where they can tax second homes, the rental properties. I think that might have to do with that big figure.
Would that be, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is that considered the short-term rental tax?
Yes, yes.
So-
So the short-term rentals,
that's
so that's, I mean, just looking at it, that's, because it's a big jump. The penalties and interest on taxes went up, $440,000. Part of that is because we collected you used the CPA funds to pay that big tax title property, so that's where that money comes in. Now, as far as the trending down, I haven't really looked into the analytics of why it was down, but it looks like the solid waste fees were down $447,000 when compared from 23 to 24.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I think that relates to mid-year or calendar year, January 1st. The board had done an audit through CL Clifton Larson Allen.
Yep.
And the rates for commercial solid waste, I believe, changed effective that, middle of that year, for fiscal year '24. So I think that would correspond to some of the drop.
Okay. So if there's a reason for that, that's good. Did he recommend a decrease in the fees, or was it just the timing of when it got billed?
I think it was a timing of when it was billed, but I
Okay.
can go back over the report.
So that's fine, and this is just I just want to just get everybody familiar, just get a flavor, I mean, of what's going on. The other one that I wanted to bring to your attention was, I'm skipping one page, but other departmental revenue went down like 38,000, and the building permits compared to 23 to 24, it dropped like 116,000 when you compare those two numbers. And the big increase is on the last page of the local receipts. We see the investment income was like $861,000 increase. So I know the short-term interest rates, the Fed funds rate has been going up, and the town's benefited with the investment income, but obviously that's going down, so I don't expect that to repeat itself. So, and one other thing, the last item on this was a miscellaneous non-recurring revenue. It went down $340,000, and luckily, the assistant town accountant brought to my attention, she actually put it on the notes that the year before they had an auction, and all the proceeds, the $408,000, that was part of the, that's why it was a drop. There was some sort of auction that went into that fund. Yep. So all in all, the comparison from this year to last year on the local receipts, collected 1.1 million more in local receipts in FY '24 than you'd have in FY '23. So, that's it. I mean, that's what I have for a financial update. I know you're trying to get your head around a budget message for next year. So the big part of the taxes is just like the property tax. So that's probably pretty easy to do, like 2.5% plus new growth, easy to project. Local aid, I mean, I would say, 2 to 5%. And if I haven't really checked what Harwich's percentages of the local aid, but I remember the Cape Town's, not a high percentage of your income is from the state aid.
Right.
And then the local receipts are your big one. So if I was to start a budget process, I would say that I would ask the departments to give me a budget that provides the same level of services next year as you have this year, like no drop-off. I wouldn't put any new initiatives. Obviously, if people have step grades, step increases, and so, like I know the town administrator mentioned that department heads put those in, or if there's a contract that increases, increase that. But I think that would be a good starting point, at least something to wrap your head around. So that's it. And like I said, if there's if there's information that you need from the finance office, is anything, just let me know and we'll get it for you. Because my idea is, it's not my idea, but the more eyes and ears on the books brings light to it. It's transparency, and it acts as a disinfectant too. So sometimes I like it when departments say, "Hey, I've been looking at my report. This looks like it was posted wrong." I'm like, "Thank you," because then you don't only have one account. Everybody's getting involved in the book. So I think it's a good thing.
Jeff, you had a question?
I have two of them, well, actually three of them. Thank you, Madam Chair. Eric, thanks for doing this, very helpful. Investment income?
Yes.
First off, how do I get involved in that investment? Because that's pretty substantial, number one. I know Pete was already thinking it, so I stole his question, I think.
Thought it was a bit low.
Well done. Eric, does that go to the general fund?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that the interest rates drive that, but I'm not sure if you guys had any big borrowing. Sometimes if you have a big borrowing in 1 year, you have more cash than you usually have. So I don't know what the answer is, why it's so high. I know the interest rates have gone up, but I'm not sure if there's other factors involved as well.
Okay, thank you. Second question, just the hotel tax.
Yep.
That you mentioned. That's because of the short-term rental tax increase, right?
That's what I'm assuming, because that's a big jump.
And if it is, I believe we allocate part of that money to housing and part of that money to wastewater. So is this, I just want to make sure this is the right place.
This is raw data, so
Okay, thank you.
if money has to be moved, that's going to go down. So
That's great.
if I have to make a journal, I'll probably have to make a journal entry, find out what those parts are and adjust it. I haven't done anything like that yet.
No problem.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
actually for me to just understand
Yep.
where we're at with this, so. Joe?
Madam Chair, if I could.
Chair, if you could.
To that point,
Yeah.
you folks are talking about the total tax that we got back. The special purpose stabilization funds were a percentage of the additional.
Correct.
And so we do have those two special purpose stabilization funds. We did have balances as of town meeting, so we'd be very interested in seeing what the balances are going forward. We haven't relied upon those funds yet, but we could at town meeting coming up in May. And on the special purpose, it no longer requires a 2/3, it's a straight majority. So it's not going to be the number you see there, although they are close just by coincidence.
Madam Chair, if I may through you. How many, that's been 2 years now we funded those two?
I believe so. Well, I believe we're in the second
In the
year.
second?
Correct.
Yeah, so for, at least I would like to see what the balance was carrying into this fiscal year and what we expect to put in, moving forward. So that would be, I'm sure we're going to get the more granular.
Yep, no, but I got that as a note here, so.
Ed had given an update for town meeting,
Okay.
so we have that
Yes.
ready for that.
That's
Yep.
great. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's all for me. Thank you.
Nope. Have at it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarity's sake, because the abundance of revenue that had to do with us not getting bills out on time is not a real scenario. Is there any way for you to parse out what that would have looked like had we not done delinquent billing?
Not now, but I can, like, maybe for the next meeting.
No, yeah,
Do it off the top
that's
of my
what I
head,
mean,
right, yeah.
because it's not money that it's ours to spend. Let's assume that we bill at the right time and we get the receipts in. We're not going to see that bump because we don't have anything rolling over from the prior year that was unrealized.
Right, so like, just say if there was just say if there's 3 billings in a fiscal year, just for the sake of argument. So maybe last year, because it was late, there was only 2, and then next year there was 4, and that'll be being 3. So I can get that and figure out, when those, with the timing of all that.
That's all I'm saying. Before we spend money we don't have.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Pete?
No, thank you. And along those lines, Eric, if you don't mind, so specifically, we're looking at the motor vehicle excise.
Yep.
And to your point, FY 2024 is showing almost a $300,000 increase. However, if we look at the line item, second line item from the bottom, it's FY 23 collection, which is $470,000. So reality is, we're behind, assuming all collections in 2024 were done on time.
Right.
So is my assumption that 470, either everybody bought a vehicle on June 30th, or we were just delinquent?
So I think it's more like the bills went out a little late.
They went out late, and so
Right.
they came in after the fact.
That's right.
That's the reason.
Yeah.
So again, I look at it I guess to Don's point is, it's showing a $300 increase that isn't a true increase. It's actually a decrease. And that wouldn't surprise me because most folks are hanging on to their cars now, and therefore we're gonna collect less in excise, right?
That's exactly right. And as a matter of fact, if more people hold on to their cars just for 1 extra year, like if it's new, it's at 90% of the value, but the next gradation is 60% of the value.
Exactly, so.
Yeah.
a decent
Mine are all
decrease
over
on
5 years, so I would get the 10%.
And then,
Fully depreciated.
You must be in finance. So, along the same lines, if I could, Madam Chair, and thankfully, Eric, you actually hit a lot of my notes that I had, and I'll try to do it as quickly as I can. So you folks talked about the short-term rental income on the hotel tax, which is an increase of $519. Are you able to actually discern that that's what that increase was? Can you, and I don't mean right now.
Not now, but
yeah,
I
you
can.
Okay.
I can research that, 'cause there's a way
Yeah.
for me to do it.
If you
yeah.
could, that'd be great, because I'd love to know that that's truly what it was and not just a number that had popped up. On the investment income, and I was joking with Jeff, it is a nice number, but was that strictly based on rate, or were there additional funds in the accounts that were all?
That's something I'll have to look into
Okay.
as well. I
If
know
you
the
could.
rates went up, but I'm not sure about the borrowing and how the cash flow was.
My suspicion is that we had more money invested.
Okay.
And so that might have been some of the disconnects between finance directors.
Yeah. So if we could clarify that, because again, that's gonna impact what we see going forward, right?
Yep.
Because even though the rates decrease, if we have a lot more money in the account, then the interest may balance out, but it may not. And finally, if I could, to the board, and through you, Madam Chair, is, as Joe alluded to, the next meeting, Section 922 of the charter, is our budget message. How do we typically do that as a board? It's been a few years since I've done it, and I was just wondering how you folks have done it in the past few years.
So normally, Joe, as we help him craft the budget message, it would be that we're talking about what are our priorities and what do we want to do. And I would say that Eric's message is similar to our message, I feel like annually, is, no big increases, no big,
So I guess to clarify, so next week is an active discussion as a collective group? Or are we going to see a recommendation?
So,
Go ahead.
my understanding, generally speaking, we have this discussion tonight and have further commentary that can come back as a draft message next week. That is a message that you all solidify, give back to me, and I disseminate.
Okay.
So that's why I jumped the gun a little bit, but talked about level services rather than level fund. So I'd like to tag out for a second and just ask if my colleague can probably give a better explanation of what level services is beyond level funding, because I've always understood that level funding is essentially a budget cut, where level services, and we use the example of postage or gasoline or other things where you still pay for what you have to pay for to factor in the marketplace.
Yeah.
But I'll shut up and let you talk.
Real quick, so level funding is, you had $1 million last year, budget to $1 million this year, level funding. Level services is that you had, 9 officers per shift, blah, 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 that type of thing. This is how much they make now, this is how much made last year, I need this amount of money. This is the uniform allowance contract, so that's level services, that's basically it. And so, as far as like policy goes, the reason that level services sounds familiar, because like, that's like 75 to 80%, that's like, usually that's the same message every year. But I have worked for small towns where they said, we want our taxes to not increase at all. So, that's a different message.
Yeah, right.
So.
So then, for that discussion, if you contemplate level services, as Eric alluded to, so I've been working with the department heads since the annual town meeting, and the department heads have been very responsive and helpful. So I had directed them on their budgets to look at their personnel costs for fiscal year 2026 only from the vantage point of step increases or longevity, retirements, everything unrelated to the cost of living adjustment, because as we all know, all 8 collective bargaining agreements come up for renegotiation in fiscal year 2026 anyway. So we already have a jump on the personnel costs, and roughly speaking, that's usually 70 to 75% of the budget
That sounds about right.
on the personnel side, on the salaries and wages. So we're going to know that number, generally speaking. The wild card then becomes the expenses for operations. And so I've been teaching Eric in the ways of Harwich, and he knows Munis better than I do, but in Munis we have EOS, which has typically been enhancement of services. So I think what we're talking about is we would not contemplate enhancement of services in the short term. And so that would be part of your message perhaps next week of continue on looking at your expenses now, and the examples I was using is, well, we have X number of mailings that we do out every year, postage went up. Well, account for the postage increase. Gasoline went up. Well, account for the gasoline price that went up, or contractual obligations under expenses. Then, as we progress through the community preservation process, which starts October 1, the capital outlay process, which is already underway and really going to ramp up with the committee meeting in the coming weeks, and as we continue to close out fiscal year '24, get our numbers more refined and more accurate, we're going to have a discussion on, we have solid numbers, fiscal years '23 to '24 on local receipts. Now we're going to know first quarter local receipts fiscal year '25, sometime in maybe late October for first quarter. So then you can do a first quarter to first quarter comparison. How do we look year over year? And then we can do that in the second quarter, because what we're going to want to do is constantly reevaluate our funding sources, separate and distinct from property tax. Now, with property tax, I look in the general direction of the audience, and I believe without the special town meeting, the finance director and the director of assessing have already worked on a schedule for the setting of the tax rate, which is fairly typical for what they're used to, so we'll have those numbers as well. So for me, budget message starts tonight. We've got positive data, but that doesn't mean we should assume that. And I'll also remind my colleague on my left that we don't even talk about local aid. It's a wash. What happens here on Cape Cod is we rely greatly on local receipts. That's how Cape Cod towns make up the difference for towns over the Cape that have local aid. And so that becomes for me, a real critical source of funding is the local receipts. So think level services, think about the revenue sources that we're seeing. The budget message is fairly straightforward, and it gets us to a point where the message that you craft next week, if you finalize it next week, that I give to the departments, they then have to insert by charter all of their budget numbers into Munis before the first Friday in December. So we always try to have it done the week before Thanksgiving, so that way the finance department can run the reports and we can meet in early December and say, here's a rough draft of the budget and what we're looking at. So that's what tonight is about and next week is about.
There, like that.
like that.
Just
So,
like that.
so it is a discussion next week.
Yes.
Which is a good thing. And if I could continue, and Joe, you just alluded to, right, the quarter over quarter, year over year type of stuff, which is great. Eric, are these munis reports, are you able to put previous year? Because like, as you said, we're at 25%. Maybe we're lucky, at the end of a quarter, and we're at 25%. It's a seasonal economy. In
Right.
3 months from now, I don't know that we're gonna be at 50%, but maybe we are.
Well, unfortunately, in Munis, you can't, but I can export the data and get that year over year. That's what I like about QuickBooks, because you just run the report, year over year, balance sheet compared to this year, last year.
Right.
Profit loss this year to last
Yeah.
year. I mean, we live and die by that usually.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Because we want to be able to compare where we're trending, and I'd rather see it month over month to month, as opposed to just quarterly, however, if quarterly.
Yeah, we could, no, that's fine. Yeah, we'll get it. We can get
It
that
may not
done.
be Munis, it might be Excel, right?
Yeah.
The outcome.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
fine,
yeah.
obviously, you're gonna extract the data from.
Yeah, we
Munis,
might not have a
but-
canned report, but we can
Yeah.
get something together.
Excellent, thank you very much, I'll be quiet now.
Don, did you?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, thank you, Madam Chair. In the previous finance director, we got something that was essentially a microfiche version of the budget that could be put in your pocket. I want to be able to, right now, say that as we move along, I'd like to look at a true line item budget based on what the input is, so that we get something that is like the book that we used to get, as opposed to,
Sure.
the Cliff Notes.
Well, if you look at the detail that's in your Munis report, that's a lot of detail. So if that's too much, that's fine, but it could be at that level, line item and with the department total at the end.
Used to be about 5 or 6 inches of a ring binder.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, just, it's better to say it now than to start
Yeah, that's
complaining
fine.
about it
It's
in March.
there. The information's there, so.
I have 2 quick questions, if I could, Eric. Thank you. The 5-year forecast, when do you think we can,
Probably,
we get that tomorrow?
no.
I was thinking tonight.
I'd say realistically, maybe I could target like December 1st, because maybe time it with the budgets, because when we do
That'd
the
be very helpful.
When we do the 26 forecast, we could just put that out for 5 years, and that, obviously, we'll have the FY '26 requested budget, and then we're gonna do the FY '26 forecast, and we can just put it out 5 years.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And rates and fees, we had a discussion, I think you were away, about taking a look at our local rates and fees.
Oh, I listened to that, yeah.
Yeah, so when would be the appropriate time to do that?
I would say that my thought was, maybe you could look at which ones would you like us to look at first? So obviously, like motor vehicle excise, there's nothing you can do, hotel, motel.
No. I'm
Building
thinking
and
like
stuff.
building, all the
Yeah.
community development. Maybe, I know the golf course is looking at rates and fees shortly, Harbor Master,
Yeah.
all of those.
As part of the, I don't want to give people extra work to do, but what I've seen in the past is part of the budget message is you have the department say, can you give me all the fees that are charged by your department, and do like a market, do a market value comparison, how you compare to other towns. That might be
Exactly where I was going with
yeah,
that.
yeah, so you get a 2-for-1. You get your budget message, but then you get the info
I
that
love
you.
how excited you get.
Yeah, I don't know,
Well,
sorry.
2-for-1 is cheaper, so.
I mean, this is really fun to have you here.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm done, Madam Chair, and I know maybe Michael probably has it.
Nothing to add.
All right, so thank you, Eric. That was excellent information, very much appreciated. Can I
So,
get-
Madam Chair, if I could, while we still have the finance director, I didn't know if you wanted him to be included in new business item D, but I'm going to rely upon Eric
Oh,
to help me
yes.
translate old business A. So I didn't know if you wanted to take those out of order.
Yeah,
how
that's
you'd like
fine. So we can let Eric go.
So new business D is your discussion on a follow-up meeting. FinCom, Select Board. Not really sure where I was getting to, but staff's here if you need us to be a part of that discussion.
Came up by, we were talking about the fact that, Michael?
And the low value, is that what we're on right now?
No, we're,
Finance committee meeting.
No, on the finance.
follow-up meeting with a rep
Sorry,
from,
that is me, yes.
Yeah.
So back in June of 2024, sorry, back in June of 2024, there was a joint meeting with FinCom. And what came out of that was a suggestion, or maybe it was more than a suggestion, of having, when the books close, somebody from FinCom, a representative, I believe they named Pete, and town administrator and our finance director to kind of comb through the books.
When the books close and free cash is certified, I'd be happy to go over that with anybody, because what I usually do is I do like a checklist, and there's a checklist. It makes the components of free cash, like what was our budget versus actual local receipts. So it breaks down what the free cash, what the components were. I'd be happy to go over that.
I think the intention was to have a small group
Yeah.
do that.
And I think your item here was to say when would we have that?
The item, when, and it did arise that, does that need a vote? Do we need a vote of this board to do that? Or was the discussion, the suggestion, and then the loose approval of the suggestion at that meeting, does that suffice to have this take place? Or do we need a formal vote?
Do you need us to take a vote to have a
No, I
meeting?
think if you start voting, that becomes a subcommittee and all that stuff.
Yeah,
If
right.
the sense is that you'd like to have staff meet with key members of boards,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Right, right.
So
I'm
then,
sorry.
yeah, no, so we're looking at what month roughly are we?
Christmas morning?
I'm only joking. So moved.
I was thinking 2 years.
So moved. I have a lot more questions for you too, so you're not leaving.
No,
That's
that's what's gonna be, not being an employee.
So what we,
Yeah, probably like December.
Early
or-
December,
yeah, or-
mid-December.
Or late November.
Okay.
It would be fine.
that's great.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
just to let Bob
Thanksgiving.
McCready, yeah, Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving,
Bob
yeah.
McCready is the FinCom rep, so this is good information for him
Yeah.
to know that it's happening down the road in
Right.
November. So thank you.
It just as an ad, we met with the water and sewer superintendent and the controller too, and we, myself and the assistant town accountant, and that was kind of like a back and forth, where do we stand on our books, we don't understand this, and I think it was productive.
Excellent.
Right. Don, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, Eric, it's somewhat analogous to the previous comment I made. I'd like to know what the free cash would have looked like had it not been inflated by a rollover, because my concern is that the free cash shouldn't have anything that you count on in a repetitive way. And we may be duped into starting to do stuff with an inflated free cash that's not sustainable beyond this year. So I'd really like to know what it really would have been.
Okay, yeah, we can do analysis on that, and just say, hey, like, I'll give you an example, the 300,000 for the excise, it says that's not sustainable, because that was 3 commitments, so, so it would be 300,000 less, whatever it comes out to be, we can do that.
Okay, that's,
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Old business item A, discussion on land.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the discussion on land of low value. I know the board's talked about it a few times. I know that Eric gave a presentation a few months back. Eric has worked with, what's Jim's?
Jim Capola Jr.,
Yeah,
Capola and Capola,
What's their bailiwick? What do they mean?
tax title experts.
So can you give an update generally on, so we have the land of low value, they're all treasurer deeds, I think.
That's
Can you walk us through the process? And I know there's a question of if the board can assign value or ascribe value to the deeds.
All right, so basically, I had to ask him, because I wasn't sure. We've already done a land of low value, and at the conclusion of that, there were some properties that nobody bid on. So there was treasurer's deeds, that's what they're called, and now it's in the town's name. So I called the attorney, I said, well, what do you do in that situation? Could we have another land of low value? He said, no, what you do is you just have an auction. There's a chapter 6077B, you can just auction that property off. And what the select board just needs to do is appoint a real estate tax custodian for the purposes of the auction, and then the real estate custodian holds the auction, and people bid on it, and then it goes from there. Then you get rid of it that way.
does that allow the town, through the board or anyone else, to set minimums? If I think that might be.
Auction with reserve.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, I even forget if we even did a minimum before. That I'm not 100% sure of, but I know the new law, starting after November 1st, 2024, when you sell property, they're going to actually require you to get a real estate appraisal. I think, yeah, so I think there was a real estate association lobby to do that. But I'm not sure about assigning a value for it. I know we could just put the assessed value, but we can set a minimum or a maximum or whatever, you know.
Set maximums. I don't think we set maximums.
Minimum, yeah, you can do a minimum. I know when I did it in Dennis, the property was kind of in bad shape, so the DPW, this was a house, DPW director, they mowed the lawn, took all the pine cones off, and we ended up getting a great price for it, gave it some curbside appeal. But I think these are just these are just strips of land.
Yeah.
So.
But there's a difference in the way you advertise them. As an auctioneer myself, there's absolute auctions, we're just putting it up, and what you get is what you get.
Yeah.
And there's an auction with reserve, which is what Jeff was talking about. So you'd have to state that up front. to
Right, that's probably part of the.
whoever the vendor is.
I'm not sure exactly what the answer, the experience that I have is like, what you get, and then the discretion of the real estate custodian says, yeah, we're not gonna accept anything. So you direct the real estate tax custodian, says, hey, listen, we're gonna allow you to auction these off for us, but I don't want you to take any lower than this. You know, so it's a qualifier.
That's with reserve.
Yeah, so.
And Madam Chair, if I could through, so with the law that's coming in November 1st, because I think town council's advice was to wait to see what the law was to impact any of these sales.
Right.
Would we still have to set aside proceeds?
I don't think you're gonna have to set aside proceeds, because I don't think you're gonna get like.
They're a de minimis value?
Yeah,
Okay.
because what this law change was if I owed $2,000 in taxes and never was paid, the town foreclosed on it, and the houses that I sold it as a town made $500,000. That's what the law was designed, because in the past, the town would they'd pay off the taxes, get all the equity. So this law was designed to say, hey, no, if there's a lot of equity in there, you have to like hold it in abeyance and return it to the owner. That's what this new law is all about. But these land and low value parcels, that's not gonna be an issue. Unless somebody wants to pay like $100,000 for each one or something, which
we'll take.
Michael.
Now, my concern, and I brought this up, I believe I emailed you, Eric, in response to your email. My problem is putting them too high. They are strips of land that are valuable to somebody because they could add them to their own property. And I know in one case, somebody had made that offer to the town, and we said we can't sell it that way. But my concern is that we go in too high. And I would just ask both of you, as you look at these, to recognize what they are.
Yeah.
And price them accordingly, or don't waste the town's time doing this.
Right, and you could, before that auction takes place, if you wanted, the board could, you know, you could ask the assessor, say, what do you think this is worth or whatever, and then you could recommend to the board, and you could direct you appoint the real estate tax custodian. Is it you?
Just happen to have the assessor.
The assessor, yeah, okay, go ahead.
So moved.
Madam Chair, Richard Waystack, Harwich. This year, I did sell a property that was unbuildable in Harwich to a neighbor. And it was actually at the assessed value. So the assessed value is a good place to start
Okay.
with. But I agree with the board members. Absolutely, I would set a very low minimum to get it sold. And there is a value. We can tell you what we feel is the true value of it. We've got an excellent assessing director, and her staff can put that information together for you. But I agree, please do not put it too high. Get them sold.
Okay. So it's just a matter of how, like, if the assessed value is 10, would you take a bid for 5 or whatever? That's something that we'd have to discuss beforehand. Would you give us a recommendation?
If you're looking at a parcel that's unbuildable, that's a sliver.
Yep.
That can be added to someone else's parcel that might give them opportunity to do things with their lot.
Right.
There's a value to that neighbor and the neighbor on the other side. That is pretty much it. There are some opportunities for mitigation in areas of zone 2s, where people who are looking to add a two-bedroom where a one-bedroom is allowed, but they can pick up land in the same area under that zone too, that they could create another lot of higher value. So there's more value to that particular person. I think you look at something to say, is it reasonable? The assessor can give you an example of what is reasonable. If it's assessed at $5,000, and it might be too high, frankly, and you can get 2,500, get rid of it, because it's only going to be valuable to a couple of people there. Bottom line is to clear out that inventory as much as you can.
Okay.
And I'd be comfortable with the assessor's opinion.
Okay, great.
And it's retaxable.
Okay. That's it for Eric, right?
You're on that, yeah, again, Patrick Otten, you're on old business, discussion of land of low value?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess my question, given who I am, is why does land need to be sold? Why can't the town just keep it as open space land and enjoy it for its aesthetic value, for ecological needs, for sustaining nature, for open space, you know, maintaining town character? I'm just curious why the town needs to sell, when open land really does, you know, contribute to Harwich's character. So that's a question. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take a shot at it.
Go ahead, Michael.
This was a process that we went through years ago to clear some lots that were basically owners and no miscellaneous parcels. And the process that we went through to get it so that we could get to the point, because there was no owner of them. So rather than a developer coming in and swallowing up pieces of land, we went through the exercise to call them land of low value, and the process was auction. We had 2 auctions. We sold the lots that could be built on, obviously, those were good. These are some little parcels of land that are next to somebody's house. And whether the board wants to revisit it or not, we have voted to do this years ago.
So the town does.
You have to go to the microphone.
The town really doesn't own these properties.
We do now.
You do?
We went through a process and we took them.
And there's no interest in the town maintaining an ownership and just having them.
Joe?
Not to these lands. These are lands that abut other properties. We wouldn't be able to have trails. We wouldn't be able to have parks. We would be very limited in what we can do with these lands of low value. However, I want to add for the record that in the last 5 years, whatever land that the town of Harwich has sold, far more acres were added in conservation trust than were ever sold by the town. So I will defend the town's record on anything we've done on land conservation versus selling certain properties because it makes sense for all parties involved.
Thank you, Joe.
So right now, your viewpoint is really this land of low value is a liability for the town?
Well, there's nothing we can do with it,
Yeah.
so.
Well,
Richard?
I mean, that's land, you know.
Understood.
The birds, the insects, the snakes, they all enjoy that space rather than having another.
Well, and if I may, they'll still be there, and the snakes will be great, because the people that are buying these properties can't do anything with them. So they'll be adding to their yards, but they will not be, and in some cases, there's wetlands involved in these, so they will not be touching them. So snakes and bugs are safe on these ones.
All right, thank you.
I just want to reiterate that fact from Mr. Ott, that these parcels are not buildable parcels. And the one that I sold this year could not be built on. And it was land that someone owned, that there was no value to them, couldn't be built on. They sold it, they received an amount of money for it. This land of low value, if the town can get some receipts from that, that's going to stay exactly the way it is. It makes sense. When I talk about someone building somewhere else, if someone's got a 15,000 square foot lot, which was the majority of town that was built on, they can build a one-bedroom home in certain sections of town. If they pick up another parcel, that will remain exactly the way it is, but it could be a mitigating factor to allow them to get a two-bedroom home rather than a one-bedroom home. But the majority of all of these lots that I have seen will remain exactly as they are.
I just add one thing, Julie. And lastly, we have had deep discussions about even like Queen Anne Road and the money from Queen Anne Road, land for land. So selling an industrial lot, but then being able to purchase something else that is wild and would remain wild.
Don?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To build off of what Michael said, just so you understand, Patrick, Joe's right. I mean, for the last 25-plus years, when we've been looking at open space, we've been looking at trying to aggregate unfragmented open space that would be meaningful for wildlife. The kind of property we're talking about here is not that. It's just associated with a little piece next to another lot and another little piece. There's no way in the world that you're going to wind up preserving any kind of animal life in the way that we actually approach buying open space.
Okay, on to new business item E.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we approve a special permit application for one-day wines and malt permit for Cape Cod rugby events to be held at 75 Oak Street on October 5th, 2024, October 12th, 2024, and October 19th, 2024, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. And C?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve a special permit application for an event and a one-day entertainment permit for the Harwich Chamber of Commerce, event to be held at Hinckley Home Center, 138, Route 137, on October 5th, 2024, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Entertainment type will be live recorded music, amplification, and some cool dancing.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. And item B, under old business, town administrator to provide an IT project update.
Thank you. And the specific project in question is the creation and assignment of email addresses for all members of boards, commissions, and committees. So I met with the IT director last week. She is working with Barnstable County IT to work out the latest scenarios that we're trying to figure out are, if we assign, we're looking to purchase, I believe, an additional 180 aliases, for lack of a better word, because that's roughly the number of committee members that serve. What they're trying to verify at the county, because that's who we're buying through, is if we assign that to a person on a committee, what happens when that person leaves? We still need to retain their email addresses. So it's different from what you folks may do. We're limited, if so to speak, in how many members serve on the select board over the years. So really, they're trying to figure out, is it better to assign by name, or is it better to assign to a committee position? And so they're waiting for Barnstable County IT to weigh in on that. It's not a small thing to figure out, and apparently right now, we're one of the only towns on Cape Cod, if not in the Commonwealth, that's trying to perpetuate this for committee members. So we need to make sure that however the names are assigned, it's more about the span of control for the records that were created and need to be retained.
So something along the lines of like chair, planning board, or something.
Correct. And so I believe she has a meeting later in, well, I was going to say October, but in October, and she's going to follow up with me, and hopefully we can announce the next steps on that one. It's just the sheer number of aliases that we're trying to do, and trying to do it in a way that works.
And then the other thing, I know I missed this meeting, but I listened in the discussion on the getting notifications was to go back and re-register on the new website.
Correct. There was a
right?
disconnect with the website upgrade, not on the emergency alerts, but on the committee and board alerts.
Okay, and then,
I do not have any town administrator report.
all right. Pete, select board?
Sorry to say I have a lot. Despite the hour, I'll go quickly. I'm really just looking for updates, so I'll run through my list of the updates I'm looking for. Update on the search firm for the finance director. So if we're going to have any information available in the next meeting or two. Update on the Harwich Center grant agreement pertaining to that reconstruction of Harwich Center and the parking spots. An update, if you got it, Joe, on the square footage of the damage to those fields behind the community center. If GHD provided us with their community support function, and if we are in the process of writing the job description for a project manager.
Can I interrupt on that one?
Yeah.
They have all that information. It was omitted from the agenda. We had it. It was taken off inadvertently. We'll have that on the 7th.
Perfect. An update and clarification on capacity as they're written on the liquor license. And the last one I have, which you alluded to today, Joe, but I don't remember the board taking action, but, so we're leaning towards no special town meeting, but we had requested potential articles for a special town meeting.
The articles that we were talking about trying to move forward on, if
Yeah,
that's the one you mean?
Yeah, I know there was, and I wasn't privy to all the articles that were being debated back and forth, but I thought we were gonna get those before us to decide if we wanted to move forward as a group. But it sounds like we might have said, forget about it.
Well, I took from the 2 meetings that I missed, but I listened to, that the board did not have an appetite for a special town meeting if there was not a wastewater-related issue needing to go forward at that special town meeting. Is that inadequate?
I see it a little differently. I think the board had a discussion about certain things that would be on a fall town meeting, and they didn't seem, the Brooks Academy didn't seem to be the right fit at that time, for a number of reasons. And then I don't remember having any discussion about a fall town meeting after that, whether or not we were gonna have one or not gonna have one. So I'm with you on that, Pete. I don't know, I know the board didn't take an action on it.
Okay.
And I'm not sitting here proposing we have one.
Right.
I just thought we'd
Yeah.
discuss it as a group.
As I understood your discussions, I've always said that the driver for me was going to be the capital plan for Brooks Academy. Separate from that, GHD confirmed they were looking at wastewater, but they're nothing that needs to be done in November, so we're going to hold off on May on that. Any of the other articles were not necessary for special in November, so that there was nothing that rose to that level for a special town meeting beyond that.
So, sorry, if I may, madam, when you say wastewater, are you referring to the width?
No, specifically, I'm referring to what I've been referring to now as Phase 3A.
Okay.
Or perhaps if anything was needed for Phase 3, but that's definitely not the case. And Phase 3A can go before town meeting in May.
Yeah, I knew that we didn't have a large population of potential articles.
I know one article that comes to my mind was the one that Richard Waystack was talking to us about in terms
Tax
of.
abatement.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that one, something we could get going and, we could have done that at a special, but it's not mandatory that we do it.
And something like the accept a statute, it would be concerning because that's going to be enough to drive a quorum.
Oh, I agree with all the.
So we
all
didn't
these
have like a
pieces, yeah.
big ticket item, so to speak.
And I don't disagree with any of it. I just, where we talked about it to the public, and then
Yeah. and then
we
didn't
didn't
go
we didn't
forward.
take an action on it as a
Yeah.
group, that's all.
So,
I think he's-
oh, I'm sorry. go
It's the
ahead.
board's pleasure on updates on some of these matters.
Yep.
I have them now.
Yeah,
I
go
can
ahead.
plow through
Oh,
them.
on my list? Well, that's up to
Yeah.
these folks might want to go to bed.
Yep.
I expected we were gonna be here till 11, so go ahead.
Search firm is the only one I don't have an update so far. On the Harwich Center grant agreement, it's been affirmed, there is no requirement on the DOT based on the original grant. Based on that information, I work with the DPW director. We do not have road layout plans or anything like that, so there is a level of engineering and research that needs to be done. So I have sought requests for road layout design and potential construction on the project related to Harwich Center. And we believe there's a funding source, so that's in process because the grant is not holding us up.
If I could, just in case I can't sleep one night, could you send me that grant agreement?
The original?
Yeah.
As
whatever.
soon as we find the original.
Okay, thank you.
What I confirmed with DOT is that the Safe Streets grant that we got during COVID is no longer something that we need to account for.
Gotcha, okay, thank you for
The community center on the square foot damage, I'm still waiting to hear back from the team. I believe they've taken the next steps of repairing, so I'd be looking at what they submitted to the vendors and what square footage is being repaired, so that should be coming shortly.
Thank you.
The GHD project manager, there's 3 different documents they come up with, that'll be coming back next week, if the chair so determines. And then the capacity on liquor licenses, we're still working with council on that one. That's why I was pointing to the chair. I know we had talked with council last week, I just can't recall right now when his follow-up was going to be.
Yeah, no, I don't know that he gave us a specific.
I think there was an ask, so I'll follow up on that one again.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Don?
Oh, sorry, I'd almost fallen asleep. To just pick up where Pete dropped off, I think one of the reasons, Madam Chair, that, when you went away, is that we were clearly under the belief that we were going to be operating on recalculated free cash from this year. And one of the real main concerns that we started talking about in those 2 meetings was we're going to have to actually spend out next year's money before we even get to town meeting for a certain portion of it if we went here. And there wasn't a lot of appetite for us to guess about what that might look like. So I think that's a fair characterization of that.
Is that, you mean, when you say that, do you mean for Brooks?
Yeah, for Brooks Academy, we'd have to actually say to ourselves, okay, we're willing to take away from the estimate that would be used in May to spend now, and nobody was willing to make that kind of guess, number one. Number two, at some point, this is another to-do thing, can we just get an update about when we might expect a ruling from the building commissioner for the first floor of Brooks Academy, if there's a waiver for use of that, because they're going to need like 2 or 3 months worth of lead time to actually clean the place out and redo it if they're capable of opening in the summer.
I will follow up with the building commissioner tomorrow. I know that the architect sent the documents that have been requested several weeks earlier, last Friday.
Okay.
So I will be following up.
But that's
with
on the
building.
to-do list
Yeah.
at some point,
It-
right?
The hope and expectation is that the architect provided everything that then allows the building commissioner to do the occupancy.
Okay.
So I'll follow up again.
Thank you.
The only thing I have is council was going to send like a boilerplate, bless you, boilerplate on the public comment policy.
Yeah.
So at some point, I'd like to see that.
Member John.
Mhm.
Giorgio,
Giorgio
yeah.
was going to send it.
I don't believe we received it yet.
No, we haven't,
Yep.
no.
Thank you, that's all.
Just a earlier criticism that we didn't advertise the wastewater meeting for tomorrow night anywhere on our website. I didn't look myself, but, or anywhere else for that matter besides in this room. Do you know of any?
So we have had signboards up for over a week. We've announced, I think there was something on the website. I do know that Pine Oaks took over the banner on the top of the website.
Maybe we can get a news alert tomorrow morning. It'd be
I
great
know
to get
that,
this many people that were here tonight, there tomorrow.
Yeah, it's been on the,
I don't think it's gonna
thing,
happen,
in East Harwich anyway.
but whatever we can do to
Message
promote
boards
it.
throughout, message boards throughout town.
Thank you. Nothing else. Motion to adjourn?
I have nothing. Can you stop cutting me off? I have nothing, Michael.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.